Alrighty, this is the Prevalent Evil Contagion, the show where we discuss everything related to Resident Evil. I'm your host, Renegade Operative, and today we will be talking about the Separate Ways DLC that came out for RE4 Remake. I'm going to go down the list and introduce my panelists. First, we have AK Austin.
Hello, hello. I am AK Austin. I think it's been a minute since I've been here, so pretty excited to talk about probably one of Resident Evil's best DLC in a while.
Next up is Shadow.
Yeah, howdy folks. Hope you're well. It's been pretty wild on my end. I was in North Carolina for a week, slumming to Jimmy Donaldson, then got back and got sick. Perfect, really, preparation for a podcast. But we're here.
I know how you feel. It might not sound like I'm sick, but I'm actually sick too. And another panelist is sick, so we're all catching the bug.
Yay.
Or the Los Plagas, so to speak. Next up is Brandon.
Hi, I guess I'm the normal person here not getting sick.
Normal, he says. Yeah, right.
They all come for
It's
you.
not like
Don't worry.
It's not like a skill issue, man. Come on.
Oh, your body's a skill issue. Your brain's a skill issue. No, I'm kidding.
Alright, you're right for the last one.
No, sir. You shut up. Shut that mouth. Next up is Claire.
Hi.
Hi, how's it going? This is a first time podcast for you.
Yeah, I've actually never been in one before.
Don't worry. We're all crazy. You get used to it after some time. Next up is Ender Lucian.
Glad to be back. It's been a while. I think the last podcast I was in was a Crisis Core one, so that was a while back, I think. So yeah, glad to be back.
Glad to have you, man, and also happy birthday to you because I know your birthday like just passed. I saw that yesterday.
Yeah, that was yesterday, and I put myself through some professional pain yesterday.
Well, we have someone else
yeah.
who experienced that. Tolkien, introduce yourself.
Hi, I am glad to be back. I think the last discussion podcast I was on was probably the one about Resident Evil 4 when it dropped several months ago. So I'm excited to be back and talk about the DLC now.
And our last guest here is Gaming Fan. Gaming Fan, introduce yourself.
The Yeetmeister himself. This is also my first podcast. I've never been on one either, but I'm very excited to talk about it.
All right, and we're gonna start the first question. So after playing the new Separate Ways DLC, what is your overall sentiment and opinion on things that this DLC got right and wrong, only from a gameplay perspective? Austin, you go first.
Alrighty. First off, I don't have the document, so it's going to be a little bit hard to keep my thoughts incoherent about the topic. If you can pitch that to me in the middle as I speak, that'd be nice. But overall, I really enjoyed this DLC. It was pretty spectacular in many ways. I would say it's overall better than the original by far, by many degrees and bounds. I think just to keep it concise, I think it got basically it's exactly what I thought it should have been, which is a alternate campaign to Resident Evil 4 Remake. I think they did that pretty spectacularly. I think what they added to like the beginning and to like the ending, and just adding like little details here and there for Ada's storyline, and of course Wesker's inclusion, being a lot more different than what we remembered and expected, but it was a very welcoming surprise. Only from a gameplay perspective, I would say adding the fact that you can use her grappling gun a lot more in combat and just traversal, which was very fun and very cool. The animations were kind of insanely sick, even though sometimes they would be a little bit buggy. I think the only gripe I had where is that I felt like a lot of her melee was a little buggy. Some of her attacks just did not connect or hit, as well as some other characters. That's just how I felt in experience, but I think for overall, the DLC was a very good step up from other DLCs in the past, and just taking what was essentially a like 4 to 5 hour campaign with, you know, just a different side of Resident Evil 4 and turning it into like almost like a 6 to 8 hour campaign with a lot of new features and just improving upon the original in many ways. So yeah, pretty good. And I'll let the next person take over. Be Shadow.
It was fine. No, there's more to that, obviously. It's always a little tricky for me because obviously I talked a lot about my thoughts on Resident Evil 4, the base game, and how, like, from a technical standpoint, obviously it's very, very well put together. But my issue with it was, you know, I felt that some of the soul in the game was a bit lacking. I felt they could have definitely delved a lot more and kind of it could have expressed itself more. Instead, it was just a very rigid, very solid, and very well put together game. I think this DLC did a decent job of, I think, addressing some of that. Obviously, getting lots of Lewis in is great because Lewis is great, and they obviously knew he was going to be great. So letting him be kind of, I don't know if I'd say cornerstone of the DLC, but a big part of it obviously makes a ton of sense. And the DLC, you know, it had some holes to fill from the main game, a few plot threads that were kind of left unexplored, you know, the opportunity to, you know, a few callbacks for the original game, while introducing new stuff. It makes total logical sense, really. And it ticked all the boxes. I thought it played pretty solidly. It wasn't too long. I don't think it overstayed its welcome. You know, just was a pretty solid, you know, time and exploration of a game that's already pretty decently. I don't know if I'd quite go as far. It's difficult. Like, a lot of people hold the original Separate Ways in a degree of reverement as the golden age of, like, having additional content to games but not having to pay for them, which of course is a completely different universe than we live in nowadays, and that's what it is. And we'll get into that discussion later on, but I think it did everything it needed to be. It didn't need to be this absolutely blow away experience. It didn't need to, like, revolutionize survival horror, thing like that. It was a very solid, well put together complement that played solid, had some fun fights, and just kind of tried to bring a little bit of 21st century to a game, and kind of bring in stuff that played decently well enough 20 years ago. But obviously, when you get stuff like, you know, the grapple hook, yeah, you're gonna have that sort of thing. It makes sense. You'd be noted to not miss of it. I don't think I was, like, completely blown away with it, but I thought it did a lot of nice stuff. I'm glad that they delved into the kind of hallucination stuff, which I had pitched them to do in the base game, and they didn't, but they ended up doing it for the DLC in the end. So I guess I'll let Capcom have the pass of it. But no, I enjoyed it. It was a good spin. I didn't get a chance to play it a second time, unfortunately. It had to be one and done for me. But bar, like, a bit of I think, an erroneous section with, like, Lewis and the fire and stuff, and it was like, it seemed a bit out of nowhere. I don't have too much to complain about.
Claire, it is your turn. What do you think of the RE4 Separate Ways DLC? Oh, yeah, you, Brandon. I forgot you were there, sir. So
Disrespected my boy.
well, you know, that's common. So, Brandon, it's your turn. What do you think of the DLC?
All right. Well, it's only from a gameplay perspective, right? Overall, though, I actually did enjoy my time with it, but I'm not in the camp of it being significantly better or a lot better than the original. There are aspects of the new Separate Ways that are kind of knock it down a couple notches. But ignoring that, if you don't compare it to the original, I really enjoyed my time with it. It was a nice, different take on the campaign. And it's interesting to see a new side of Ada that we didn't necessarily see before, at least until Resident Evil 6 per se. But here, though, Ada definitely feels like a whole new character, and, like, I enjoy his take on it. Not my personal favorite take on Ada, but I do enjoy it overall. Now, the gameplay, though, like, it was actually really good, but it had some quirks that unfortunately are common in Resident Evil 4, so she inherited those issues. But the mechanics that are unique to her, like the grappling hook or her shotgun in particular, absolutely love it. The only sin that I have truly that hurts it is that it's too short. I want another chapter because I had so much fun playing as Ada. But as far as being the best DLC, I agree. It's the best DLC we had in a long time, especially since when you compare it to Resident Evil 5. I think those two DLCs for that game are like the gold standard on making a good DLC. That later games were basically our hit or miss in that department as far as quality DLCs. and I'm finished.
All right, Claire, you can go next.
So I haven't actually played the game, but from what I've seen is I do like it, and I have to agree that it is cool seeing Lewis more and getting to know his character, because I feel like that I didn't really know a whole lot about him, and I haven't seen the original game, like the original one for it yet. So I've seen bits and pieces, but also like with Ada's grappling hook, I do agree. I really like the fact that you can actually see it more, and it does a bit more. Sorry, not the best with explaining things. But overall, I think the game is really good, and I think they really did good with the character story, the backgrounds, and all that stuff. So I'm done. So Enderlin, it's your turn.
Alrighty, so for me, when it came to a gameplay perspective, I had tons of fun playing Zeta actually. Just like in the original, her combat attacks after an enemy was stunned, I really loved them. They were really cool. I loved how she uses the hookshot on enemies much further away, so it makes things so much easier. With Leon, you basically had to run up to an enemy and kick them, suplex them, do whatever. And then after getting the Ada charm, it was fun grappling shields away from enemies. So overall, I had fun and no complaints, though when it came to a gameplay perspective from professional, yeah, stagger is just crazy. Yeah, tons of stagger. Anyways, insert Tolkien.
But yeah, I pretty much agree with what was said above. I did enjoy the DLC for what it was. I actually had to go back earlier today and kind of do a quick glimpse through the old Separate Ways, because it's been so many years since I played it. I was like, I can't even remember what was in it, what was same, what was different, which is a whole nother question. But I did enjoy it. I liked the charm as well, where you got to grapple hook the shields away from enemies. Your animations are really nice. I enjoyed having Lewis more in it, and the story I thought was well put together. But I too had some issues going from standard to professional. I'll probably explain more later, but the stagger was atrocious in professional, as well as some things that were going on when you're in the middle of an animation. I had some massive issue with. But other than that, I did enjoy the DLC. I have one more trophy to get. I'm hoping to get it this week, and then it's plat again. But Ren, go on.
Yeah, I didn't really hate a lot about this DLC or had any gripes, if anything, which is the next question. There is stuff in the original Separate Ways campaign that I really hated. There's one area in particular I'm going to talk about, but the fact that it's not in this game kind of boarded up a point for me. I think that the combat is fine, the gameplay was fine for the most part, but since it is an extension of RE4, in comes the problems with being stun locked to death, which they didn't fix. I was hoping they would balance that out and maybe make it less BS, but unfortunately it still exists, where you get grabbed, another guy hits you, you get hit again, and then you're dead. I liked everything they added to it. Some people say, oh, they just relatively rushed it out, and I don't think that's the case, because it seems like the level design and the stuff that comes with it is, coherent to an extent. There are some parts that's like, okay, well, I wish this part would end quicker or stuff like that, but overall it's like very minor nitpicks in certain areas, and I had a lot of fun of just messing around with Ada, using her eagle vision, weird eye, to search around in the environment and find stuff. And it seems like her gameplay, you do go through a redux of areas Leon has been through, surely, but it's different places or areas or stuff that suits her sort of spy espionage gameplay. And I kind of like that in the beginning. It's like this whole little James Bond theme playing in the background. I thought that was a little bit like a nice homage there to her being a spy. So I like that bit a whole lot, and my gripes are very minuscule. As I said, it's just with the mechanics of RE4 comes the BS with it, which is stun lock dead. And that kind of happens a lot in the DLC, especially in the room with the Gyarados. And I got the business in that room when it happened. But that's my opinions on this question so far. I will move the baton to Gaming Fan.
Thank you very much. I thought this DLC was fantastic. Honestly, like the perfect extension from the original game that I don't think the original Separate Ways was. I liked the original, but I had no reason to play it again. Whereas this one gave me so many opportunities to replay it. And just giving Ada her own gameplay style and identity was such an important thing for me, because original basically didn't have that, but this one 100% improved on that with the grapple hook, ripping away the shield, but also the crossbow. And even though I can't stun lock Sadler with it, but it was still really fun to use. Basically acting as sort of like a weaker explosion than the original crossbow, but still one of my favorites. I really like it. And even though the levels are a little repetitive, there's enough new there to where I didn't mind really at all. But the biggest thing also is that this was treated as an actual campaign extension. Like the original Separate Ways, there were so many features taken away from you, but they were kind of given back in this new one, which I think justifies a lot. But you have like the merchant actually giving you upgrades, the side quests are still here, you still have more unlockable attaché cases, charms, the treasures to find and combine. Like everything brought from the base campaign was brought over to this just for more. It's just more in general, and that's why I really love this campaign. And the stun locking thing, I've actually not had too much experience with that. There is that room that Ren mentioned that, yeah, that room could get pretty bad. But overall, I think maybe one time I got stun locked to death, and it was annoying, yes. And I have not played on professional, so I will not comment on that. But overall, I don't really have any issues. It's all nitpick stuff, to be honest. Like, I still don't completely understand why we only have one shotgun, 2 rifles, and a single SMG, and 3 pistols. Like, I understand it's just a campaign, but that was a problem in the original, and they just kind of brought it back for some reason. I don't hate it because it's less to manage, but it's the same with body armor. It's kind of like, why was it taken? Like, it kind of makes sense a little bit, but the why just kind of hits you weird. And as far as gameplay is concerned, I think frame rate, thanks to Denuvo, is an important thing to complain about. My PC is not perfect, and Denuvo was definitely not helping, but that's pretty much everything I've got on it. So back to Ren for the next topic.
All right, we're going to move on to question number 2. How do you feel about segments of the game compared to the original if you played the original OG Separate Ways? The question is especially interesting if you take things into consideration with what they cut and with what they added with the original back and forth. What did you like more or less? Austin, you go first.
Okay, so I've played the OG Resident Evil 4 Separate Ways campaign a bunch of times. Like a lot. Almost the same amount of times I've played the original, which is a lot as well. But in comparison to the remake and the original, I'll start with what they added. They added a brand new beginning chapter, which is a prelude to the original Separate Ways that even then starts even a little bit in a prelude to even before you even get to that point. They add in a original chapter that shows her rescuing Lewis, and the progression of their dialogue to her pretty much having a Mr. X character in the game, which is U3, is insane to me. Like, what do we do in order to make Ada's campaign still similar but a breath of fresh air? Oh, let's give her a Mr. X in the form of U3. That shit was insanely awesome. And they did a bunch of callbacks to like Resident Evil 2, to even Resident Evil 3.5 or whatever, the Hookman demo, which was really sick with U3. They pretty much added in the things that they cut from Leon's campaign, quote unquote cut. They just reused the ideas for Ada's, which I felt like gave her campaign a little bit more like like flair. Instead of like, oh, it's one linear thing and you get from point A to point B. Like, no, we're gonna give you some unique little either boss fights that Leon doesn't fight, or little sections that Leon didn't get to have in the remake that Ada has, because we either they didn't have the time or they just wanted to recycle the ideas. Who knows? But what they did add into this game and also added differently, which is, with the laser room, they added a unique little monster that appears there that's supposed to give you a little fright. Even though it was kind of used very short, it was a cool idea that I wish that was maybe expanded upon and given a bit bigger section, but what we got was still pretty good. I think that I think the only cut content was like some dialogue that in the original with Leon and Ada had, or some Ada moments was kind of cut, like her versus Krauser, which to be honest, I thought was a little bit kind of rushed in the original, in my opinion. It felt kind of forced. So like, oh yeah, he's there, like, oh, I hate you, Ada, like, I'm going crazy, and Ada's like, all right, I'm gonna put you down for good. I think the other cut thing is, Leon strangling Ada. We never got that, which is, a little like, oh, Leon's just going a little, going to the dark side of the Force, essentially, with the Plaga. I, however, think that the stuff that they continue to, like, leave out of the entire experience, it's, for some people, it's a gripe. For some people, they're like, oh, thank God. And some people are like, oh, I didn't really care either way. I thought it was okay, and I didn't like it either. I think personally for me, I would have really liked the the prelude to the U3 fight just done better. I think the idea is cool. I think the execution in the original is kind of like, oh, it's either dodge or lose a ton of health in the original. And I'm kind of glad that they kind of shifted towards like, oh, here's a big boss fight, here's 2 fights. And the boss fights themselves are kind of cool. I think they're a little bit better, unless, oh, just run away, blah, blah, blah. They give you the mechanics, etc., etc. I feel like there's a lot of cool island bits that Leon didn't get to explore that Ada does, which is like, dealing with some sentry turns. Even though people had gripes with the whole automatic turrets, I think they did it a little bit better in Ada's. Overall, I think what they cut from the game is it doesn't need to be in the game to be a full experience or to be a complete Resident Evil 4 remake. I think they cut just enough to be okay with it and added some originality to make it a little bit more fresh. Yeah, I personally think the stuff that was added and that was cut, I think it was fine. I enjoyed what they did with it. I don't mind what they cut. So I'll let Shadow take over for now.
I do think the DLC probably benefited on a pacing front more than the main campaign, because this is effectively, you take Resident Evil 4, you kind of summarize it in about like 4-6 hours, and it means that everything in the DLC has to kind of be more impactful in a way. There's not really a lot of room for a lot of fat on the sides. It was a criticism I had of the original game, that I do think at times the game kind of just meandered a bit, and it was kind of like, not like you were spinning your wheels, but there were definitely occasions to me where I felt like, some of it was optional, some of it admittedly wasn't, but it just felt like you were just kind of not really making that much progress. The Del Lago River, for example, you could spend forever there just going around doing kind of random stuff. So I do think this game definitely benefited a lot from that, just being a much more condensed form. And forcing you to kind of, cover a lot of ground and a lot of different areas and a lot of different things in not a particularly large amount of time. I would definitely say as well that obviously, like, there were some nods, obviously, the base game, Verdugo and U3. Spoilers, by the way. I don't know if that's been mentioned yet. Yeah, definitely, it was a nice touch. Obviously, it was one of the several things that was noted was missing from the original, because, of course, people are going to write down every single thing that was missing from the original, because there's obviously a lot of notable things. And it's a nice way to kind of tie it back into the game, but not be something that's, like, on the main front. And, obviously, there were some things missing from the main game like that, and then, obviously, stuff like the gondola ride. the laser room, that sort of thing. People went, oh, that's not the main game. Well, that's because they had it as kind of nods in the DLC, and that's fine. Like, you don't have to do a remake step for step. Like, there's absolutely no reason to do it, and you shouldn't do it. You should kind of like acknowledge what came before and use what you want. And if there's stuff that doesn't really quite fit in, throw it in for the side story. I think that's totally fine. And I think that kind of benefited the gamers a lot. Other things, I won't get into the story too much here because I know we've got that later on. There's obviously some pretty significant story changes they brought on for the DLC, which some of it makes sense, some of it you probably should do, and some of it doesn't surprise me, even though they first killed the guy off 15 years ago, and they still continue to find ways to bring him to every game they can physically think of. But yeah, definitely, as I say again, like having Lewis in definitely made for a better experience. Even obviously Ada is this lone operative, but the devs knew that they had something really good with Lewis, and unfortunately, I think his use in the main game was a little more limited than maybe they could have done with. I know when I spoke about like every time Lewis was on camera, it just felt like the game just had a nice sort of fresh air to it, which it didn't retain particularly well when it wasn't. It was just kind of Leon in some rain, kind of moody and grimy and all super serious. And obviously Lewis was a nice change of pace for that. So having him definitely involved a lot more makes a ton of sense. So I think the changes they made were fine. I don't think they had to have everything. Obviously, there's some definite things I want to talk plot-wise, but I'll leave those for later on. But yeah, I think obviously the inclusions of some of the stuff from the original game, made total sense to me.
Brandon?
All right. Well, how I feel compared to original, about a few seconds. It's kind of how I feel like about the remake in general. Like certain areas I liked more, others I really didn't. But what I necessarily take issue with, different ways, especially how the community sentiment is, they are saying that the new version of the campaign is more original than the original version of RE4, which I strongly disagree with that sentiment because most of Ada's new areas were areas that we already had in Leon's campaign in the original game, but they took it away from him in the remake and gave it to Ada. I can't even say that as original considering we already had these areas before, just repurposed for the context of the remake. But what they did that is absolutely new here, I did absolutely enjoy. Like the lab, granted, Laser Room was the original as well, but I liked what they did with it in context of the giant monster. I don't know his name, but I wish I could fight it in a gunfight because that thing looks so cool. I actually wanted to kill it. That segment lasted too shortly for my liking, and I wanted to see more of it. It was really cool, but I did really like the lab. Probably my favorite segment of Ada's campaign, even if it's too short. It was a nice little change of pace, running away from a pseudo Mr. X type enemy. And as someone mentioned earlier, like Lewis given more prominence, I was super happy for because Lewis, is a really cool character, both the original and the remake. So giving him more screen time is absolutely a banger. So, but other than that, though, I don't have much to say because I'm not gonna go into boss fights yet until we get to question 5 and other little story elements. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass my turn up.
All right, Claire, it's your turn. Oh,
So I think like,
What?
oh, I'm sorry.
It's fine. Go ahead.
So I think like from my experience from watching the gameplay of Separate Ways is the fact that I do agree with a few things that was already said. One with again, Lewis being more in the Ada's campaign with storyline, you can see a lot of that stuff. And then with the laser room, that was like one of my favorite things to see because like I don't know if the original had that at all since I haven't seen it, but I've seen like on like where people said that they didn't have it and then like some that they did, so I'm not for sure. But when I watched the gameplay, it was so cool to see that laser room and like how she was able to get like past all that and everything. So that was yeah. So it's Lucian's turn. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Go ahead, Lucian.
All right. So for me, this might be a short one because it's been a long while since I played the original Separate Ways. Though this DLC compared to the original, probably for me at least, is more memorable, though it's been a while. I do remember some returning locations, like the maze. I remember that being in the original. Also, the Saddler boss fight. And I don't remember much, Lewis, from the original, but I did like the addition of that. And I should have revisited the original before this, but I just never did. Insert token.
As I said earlier, I had to go back and watch a little gameplay from the OG because I could not remember anything about the Separate Ways. I just remember I think I played it once and dropped it and never played it again because I was not a huge fan of the original one at all. This one I do prefer a lot more. As Austin said, I really liked the fact that you had the Mr. X-ish coming after you all the time. You had like the visions, her being infected. I really liked that they added that into it. It made it very different than the original. It made it more thrilling. They added the prelude to the prelude. I liked getting all the ingredients for Lewis. I thought that was interesting and a little bit different to do. And the same with the chase in the lab with the lasers. I really like that. The guy, when he showed up the first time, I screamed so loud. I was like, what in the hell is this? I don't remember this from the OG. And I was like, oh yeah, this is different. But yeah, and then you had the Saddler boss fight at the end, and then traversing through all the cranes and the rooftops and everything to get the rocket launcher to Leon. It was all really done well, and I enjoyed it a lot more than I remember liking the OG.
All right, so I guess it's my turn. I played a little bit of the original before I played the remake, and there's a couple of things that's worth noting. I guess I'll go into some things I prefer they should keep, and one of the things that I thought they should have kept was the Krauser thing. It's cool they still implemented him in the story, which we'll talk about later. However, that being said, I like that he actually came back at the end. He knows he didn't like Ada. He knows in this sort of reimagined timeline that people are coming after him after reading the files. Why not have him have one last battle? But I saw a comment on Reddit that said, well, maybe if you think about it this way, it kind of would have ruined the moment of him and Leon and him finally getting that final victory when he stabbed Krauser in the chest, because it's more of a rookie to master relationship with them. And I was like, okay, maybe I can kind of see that. That makes sense. But still, I did like when he came back at the end and he fought Ada, and that was kind of cool in the original, as well as some other stuff that you get in there. Like you get some more background on Wesker's umbrella. To my memory, I don't think they talked about that at all in this remake. So like I said, a lot of that is going to be reserved for the next question. But overall, when it comes to stuff I didn't like, it kind of stands out way too obvious. It's like you have your middle ground of stuff that they had to implement, like the maze and the village section where you run around and you shoot people, you shoot the ganado. This time around though, you can take Leon's jacket and sell it, which is that's the fucking most hilarious thing ever. You could take Krauser's beret and sell it and just put it on the black market for the merchant, so he can just say, hey, I got a new shiny sheepskin jacket, I feel good about this. I thought that was funny. Overall though, it is some parts where I was cool with it, them cutting, and other parts not so much. The parts that I'm cool with is definitely the boat section. I thought that part in the original was balls, where you go through an entire boat and there's gun turrets everywhere. Gun turrets, cannons, missiles. It's kind of similar to the ending, because the ending is almost similar, except they take the gun turrets away, but there's like a bunch of guys with like RPGs. But this time, that boat section in the original was so bad. You had to get these keys and cut it on and destroy all the turrets while you're getting shot at like 9,000 times. And I don't think it gelled well and it flowed well with the gameplay at all. So they decided to remove that entire area completely because they know it was not good. And in the shotgun, Ada's shotgun is much better in this remake. I'm sorry, that pump action shotgun in the original is bad. I hated it because I felt like going against shields and stuff like that, it wasn't doing much of anything. Plus, you can upgrade your guns and get more stuff in this remake versus the original. So obviously, you have a deeper item cache with your charms and everything you could put on it, which is also a nice upgrade. So there's some bits and bobs I would switch around, but overall not much. I think what they did get rid of was cool. And just to go on what Austin said, one more thing I would have kept is probably the more dramatic opening to U3, because I feel like in the original, when he shows up, it's, you don't know what is going on. You just hear rumbling and he crashes through the wall. And then there's that level where it's like the canisters are falling. I don't know if I would have kept it the same way, but I would have definitely changed it to be like, oh, you have to get out of the container somehow. Kept that part, and then you can go to the giant open gauntlet area where it's not like, oh, you have to go and open all these gates and blow them up. It should have been a little bit more straightforward at that final part, but I would have kept the beginning and just reworked it so it's less annoying. That's about it. That's the only change I'll probably make. Overall, though, I would say everything else has been pretty peachy so far, from original to remake. I will pass the baton over to Gaming Fan.
Mine's probably gonna be pretty short as well, because even though I played Separate Ways, I actually don't remember a whole lot of that. I played it just before the new one launched to get some kind of context on everything, and I actually found it to be kind of boring in many ways, mainly for gameplay reasons, but also I just don't remember that many sections. The Krauser thing, I do agree with what that Reddit comment you read, or whatever it was, written about the way Krauser died in the new one. I do agree with that take, because I think having to fight him again would be kind of like, what? But Leon had his whole moment thing and all that good stuff. But the lab, I did really love the lab. I don't remember the monster's name either. It starts with the M, but I'm going to call him Carl. The fact that Carl was invincible and you just kind of had to run, it kind of temporarily turned it into like a real horror game. So you could like hear it like stomping above you, and you could see like almost like the alien isolation dripping from like the grates that you were crawling under. It was really, really awesome. And then the satisfaction of just seeing that laser grid come through and wipe him out was amazing. But as far as changes from the original, aside from Krauser, that's what's sad. I really can't remember much. I just didn't find the original all that memorable, to be honest. It didn't help that I was kind of rushing through it to get just like context stuff. But outside of just the story changes, I don't remember what they did much of in terms of gameplay. I just remember it being a little boring. So yeah, that's really all I've got to say about it. So next question, Red.
Alrighty, this is question number 3. It's going to be kind of a quick one. Some people might have very answers though. But what do you think about Lily Gao's performance as Ada Wong? Do you think she improved, didn't improve? Cite what you thought about her voice acting and overall performance. And I'll start off with Austin.
Alrighty, so as some would know, I think Lily Gao as Ada was fine. I think that people who hated her performance, I think some of them did have some good critiques about it, but there was a lot that was super negative, and to the point where I was like, okay, you guys need to chill because it is not as bad as you guys think. If you guys realize that her performance is is completely based off of the direction that they wanted her to go. And I feel like the direction that they wanted her to go was a more cool, like a more of a cool, relaxed, and kind of like a laid back version of Ada that isn't super seductive or like super like, hey handsome, how's it going type of feel. It's more like she's supposed to be like a secret agent that's not supposed to have feelings, and that's literally what Wesker is talking to her about. Like, hey, you're not supposed to be like intimately involved in the mission because of some guy that you like. It's essentially what he tries to tell her, like, hey, don't get distracted. You're supposed to be a professional here. I will say though that during the time that I played as Ada and just hearing her lines, there are some lines where you're like, okay, they could have probably done that better. Like, I think the way that she presents herself in some lines could have been done better, but I don't think there's a line or like dialogue choice for her that I felt was too bad. There was some moments where I was like, okay, she sounds pretty good here. Like some of the added context and dialogue that she has with Lewis is pretty good. I think that she's like, hey, can you like hurry this up? And she says in a way that I was like, yeah, that's the Ada that I remember in the remake. That she's kind of like she wants to get this job done, but then she has her morals, and she's like, I don't know about this. I like overall. Do I prefer the other Adas? I think I prefer the other Adas in the context of what they were. I think Resident Evil 2 Ada in the remake, I think she fit really well. I don't think Resident Evil 4 remake Ada would have fit that way, and I think Resident Evil 6 Ada and that performance, I think that fits better than Lily Gal would have fit there. Again, it's all because of direction and what they wanted to do with the character. That being said, could she improve upon it? Yes. I think there are some critiques she had here and there. I think her range could have been a little bit different in some areas. I think some of the lines that she said could have been delivered a little bit better. But overall, I thought it was fine, and I personally liked her take as Ada. That is my personal opinion. You can disagree or agree, but I feel like the people who gave her too much hate or too much criticism in the form that it was way too negative and were completely blasting her for completely devious reasons. Yeah, she's fine. I think she's good, and that's all I'll say. You can I'll pass it off the mic to Shadow.
It was always tough for Lily in the base game, I think, because it's, as I talked about in my review for that, trying to fill that role is kind of difficult because Sally Cahill did like just a fantastic job with that role, which I think is kind of a difficult one to cast. I think it's a difficult set of shoes to fill. And I think as well, Sally was like made the voice and kind of the character her own for quite a long period of time. Like you think Ada didn't really appear in actually all that many games. Well, RE2, RE4, Darkside Chronicles. I think she might have been something else as well. But other than that, it was all Sally for what, like 10, 12 years or something or whatever. And that's a long period of time. So anyone that's coming in afterwards and has to then kind of like try and create almost their own version of that character, it's difficult. You know, it's like, I'm sure like Nick had the same issue trying to follow Paul Mercier as Leon. You know, that's a tough job when someone has become sort of so identifiable to a certain particular character. Although I will say, obviously, some of the stick that she got for the base game was, or the original remake, I should say, was obviously ridiculous. And should just like it was abhorrent, some of it, and just completely absurd. I certainly didn't go into this thinking like I wasn't like thinking of that playing the game. I was like, okay, yeah, that's a voice. I remember this now, and yeah, it's just a different style for Ada and kind of fitting this alternate world that's lived in. You know, where she's tried to be a bit more kind of chill with her surroundings and whatever else. But, you know, I think she did a fine job. I'm not going to sit here and say it's like, you know, I'm a bit of a stickler sometimes for, you know, old school and obviously like some of the old voice artists and whatever else. You know, it's easy to get stuck on that, especially when like that's kind of what you grew up with and what you're used to. Alison Court still has not responded to any of my letters that I've sent her. I'm very disappointed in that. But yeah, I think she did a fine job. You know, couldn't ask for too much more. I'm glad that, you know, like she hopefully just be enjoyed for kind of what she did, which I think was totally fine. But yeah, some of the stuff in the base was obviously absurd.
Brandito, what about you?
Okay, so this is a interesting question for me. So I'm gonna start and preface saying this like I had nothing against her. Nothing personal. I'm just giving my opinion on about the performance. So certain bad actors can say that we're X, Y, and Z for not liking someone's performance, right? Just want to get out of the way. But that being said, though, there's only so much you can realistically blame on the directing of the people who's creating the game, right? Because, for example, you take the worst movie in the world and still have decent acting in it for whatever reason, you know, it happens. But that said, though, like Lily, her performance comes down to more to a line-by-line cases. Because, quite frankly, in base Resident Evil 4, her performance was honestly pretty bad. I'm not going to sugarcoat on that one. I didn't like it at all. in separate ways. Now that we have more dialogue with her and more time for her to talk, we don't know whether these dialogues were recorded immediately after her dialogue with Resident Evil 4 was finished or before the game was finished. We don't know, right? So all we know, she could have had more time to get comfortable with the character. But that being said, though, certain deliveries was not good at all, but others were really good. I think she could definitely use some practice with voice acting, assuming she has done it before. I don't know who she is outside of her work with Resident Evil, because she was Ada Wong in one of the live action movies, and now Ada Wong in RE4. So I think she needs a little practice, and maybe she could grow into the role pretty well. But yeah, like as Shadow mentioned, compared to her, the legacy of the character, I would say that this is probably the weakest Ada we ever had, and that's saying something. No, all things considered. But yeah, overall, I'm not the biggest fan of Lily Gao's Ada. There's certain areas where she's it's fine, others not so much, but not my cup of tea. And if she gets recasted in the next game with Ada, hey, no sweat off my back. So sorry, not sorry. All right, I'm done.
All right, Claire, it's your turn.
So I think like Ada's voice in separate ways, I do agree. It does seem more calmer, like they're trying to get her laid back. But I also think that she does a good job as well. I do agree that there are some things that she could work on also, to like where she can be calm, but then she got like that vibe that she can usually have. I also do like the second, like in Resident Evil 2, the voice Sally's as well. I do think that if Lily could like kind of, I don't know how to explain it, because like I think that Ada's separate ways voice is more like softer as well than the Ada in Resident Evil 2. Hers is more like firm and stern a bit, but that's just like my opinion. I do love both of their voices because they both do really amazing jobs. But I also think that, that there are stuff that Lily could work on, but it just takes time. And if she does play Ada again in the future, I hope that, that she still tries really, really hard to be an amazing Ada, because I do like her. I really do. I just know that, there's some things that characters can work on. And that's the end of my turn. And
All right. So for me, I felt like she did improve in this DLC. I felt like she was going for what they were trying to portray the character Ada in Resident Evil 4. It seemed to me in the base game, I don't know, maybe it's the like recording equipment or like how it sounded. It sounded kind of off too. I don't know. But that can just be me. I don't know if it was her voice, but I mean, I honestly didn't mind it, especially some lines. And yeah, I hope if she does play Ada again, I'd honestly just welcome it in. Alright, Token.
I don't have too much to say on the matter. I think, as others have said, she had really big shoes to fill. Fans were very much like the other actress that played or voiced Ada, and to have her come in, and then he had all the drama with her and all that going on, and been rough for her as an actress, but I think she does fine. I mean, there wasn't anything I could think of off the bat that I didn't like, but neither could I think of anything that I loved. But I have no issue with her if she continues to be Ada further down the line, whatever games they make. Obviously, people are looking for her to improve in some ways, but I really have no issue for or against her at all.
All right, so everyone knows what I think on this whole situation. I'm gonna be blunt. If someone is willing to go into someone's DMs and harass them over a fucking video game, I believe they are losers. If they were doing that behavior, I firmly believe it. That being said, and people gotta learn to separate art from the artist too, because that's just absolutely ridiculous to me. It's the same thing I say about Star Wars every day, each and every single time when people do that. You guys got to learn how to control yourselves around these actors. That being said, I still feel the same way that I did in the RE4 podcast. It's like 50-50. Gal has lines where she excels at and she shines. Like I feel like whenever she decides to have fun, or you know, when she was talking to Wesker in the bedroom when he saves her, I'm not making any connotations there. I'm just saying when he saves her life and she plays around with him in the dialogue, and she starts talking to him, that felt like Ada to me. That felt like the character where she was getting into the tune. But the other issue is that whenever she's super monotone and it's like normal dialogue, it could even be a deaf scream. It doesn't come off as believable to me. It feels like if you compared her and Nick, it's like day and night almost, because you can tell he puts effort into regular talking, emotions, that whole bit. And I feel like he conveyed that a lot more better in normal conversations, whereas she has problems with it and she still needs to address those. That being said, it does seem like she tries to have a lot more fun with her voice in this game, so it bumped it up to being okay, but there's still problems to sort out. There's a reason why people kind of say Sally Cahill is one of the best Adas, because whether it came down to her emotions or talking in cutscenes normally or trying to convey something, everything was spot on and believable. And I think it comes down to that idea of deception, because you don't know. I think in the original RE2, you don't know what Ada's intentions are at all, and that was conveyed really well in the game. It came off as slightly monotone, but not really, and that's the tricky part. You're trying to figure out, who is this woman, why is she here, and what is her goal and agenda. Like, she's looking for a boyfriend. I think that angle also being cut, that's another story entirely, of John and everything, was something that I was kind of about, but I digress. Either way, it's something that's not so bad compared to the main game. Although I don't necessarily have an issue with those people who are kind of like eyeing at Capcom when they made that choice to say, oh, we're not going to use Jolie Anderson anymore. We're not even going to call her and give her a shot anymore. So that whole situation was weird, but the rest and the harassment and all that other stuff, I don't condone that at all. My opinion is pretty much similar, except she improved just a little bit, but there is still more room for improvement. So I'm going to move on to Mr. Gaming Fan.
Oh boy. Y'all are gonna hate me in a second. To be honest, between the base game and Separate Ways, I can't even tell a difference. Maybe there was a difference now that I can't remember who mentioned it, but like a quality equipment issue from the base game. I when you said that, something kind of ringed back in my head. It sounded a little familiar. Like that could have actually been a problem. So that you may not be alone on that one, but Lily Gao, oh goodness. In the base game, I actually didn't care a whole lot. I know everyone was sending her death threats, which is absolutely inexcusable. Y'all need to go out for like a month. All right, anyone hearing, go off the internet for like a month, and I promise you, your life will change. Absolutely.
Touch grass.
Exactly. Go touch grass, please. But inexcusable. Yes, separate the art from the artist. But at the same time, I'm the most critical here. I think she sounded terrible for mainly her range, because no matter what she's saying at all times, I played this multiple times. I listened more intentionally the first time around after hearing the criticisms. Everything she says is said in the exact same tone or undertone. She always sounds like she has a job to do. And that would be fine for a side character or like an NPC or something. because she sounds like she's the character type, but not the character. She sounds like an agent, but she doesn't sound like a character. So if she were just kind of like a one-off agent person, she'd sound fine. But she's replacing a personality. She's not replacing just some agent. She's a personality now. But now she doesn't have any personality. Every time she makes a joke, or anytime it's supposed to be her feeling emotion-ish, she just doesn't sound like it. Someone could be dying in front of her, and she would not sound any different than when she's just talking to Wesker. It was extremely hard to take seriously. And every joke, only one joke do I remember being okay, like acceptable, like an acceptable quip. When Louise said, "What would I do without you, Ada?" And she said, "Be parasite food." That was like the only time she sounded like she was answering that normally. But for every other time, it's almost like you could hear her behind the booth or like behind the mic just being bored. She just sounds like she's bored. And after a quick wiki search, apparently this is her only video game, which explains a lot. I'm not sure why they brought her in from the movie, but like I said, she only ever sounds like she has a job to do. But what something about what AK said about separating the art for the artist in the terms of the direction, the creative lead, it sounds like they could have told her like, "Hey, this is a more grounded experience, and you're like this agent person trying to do a job for our client." And she took that to like the extreme. She sounds like she took it like all the way to the extreme. Be like, mega serious agent. I'm Batman. I have a job to do. It could be partially her fault. It could not be. Maybe she did that and they told her, "Hey, that's fine. You can just go with that." And so it would be their fault. I don't know, but I really did not like her voice because she just sounded the same all the time. I could not tell you a thing about her personality, even compared to someone like Wesker. Or like when even Master Chief from Bungie's Halo games sounds like he's got more emotion per line than Ada ever had. I think that's a problem. That's my complete take on that. Back to Ren.
All right, that was an interesting assessment, and I guess one last thing I wanted to sort of mention was, yeah, I agree. It is down to voice direction. Just to clarify, my statement about separating art from artists was a little bit different than Austin. It was kind of like the way the people harassed her is the way they should separate art from artists, because it's just like, all right, I understand you hate it, but bro, I don't think being in those DMs and being like that is gonna make you look any better. I've seen a few RE extremists kind of do that and interact with me, and I was just like, bro, I just think you're crazy. That's my opinion and sort of the replies I was given on that. But
yeah, I accidentally mixed two people's responses when I was saying that, so that was my bad.
Oh no, it's cool. But yeah, I do agree when you put it that way for the voice direction. They might have told her that, and there's a strong possibility that she took that super literal. And like I said, I have no issue at all with people kind of side-eyeing Capcom and be like, why didn't you bring back the original actress if you guys were trying to be more consistent with the newer reimagining? What's happening? So I totally agree with that assessment as well. It's kind of a little bit weird, but I know it's like showbiz, so it happens. People get replaced, but that one was just kind of crazy to me. After we've interviewed the original actress, she said she would come back if they asked her, but they never did. So we're moving on to question number 4, which is going to be a big one. It's all about the story changes in separate ways. How do you guys feel about this? Austin, you go first.
All right, story changes. I've kind of expressed a little bit about that in like the second question, but to be more precise, like about like Wesker and Ada being infected and the whole Krauser bits. So start off, Ada being infected, cool. It is a different take on her story, and that she pretty much has the same like circumstances as Leon, where he's infected and his time is running out. However, her infection is actually earlier than his. His infection doesn't take place until I think like almost, I want to say like almost like 10 hours, technically after hers. So she's actually closer to being completely overtaken than Leon, except for she gets hers taken care of earlier. So it kind of evens out that, oh, her circumstance isn't like that. And even Leon's gets progressed even further by freaking Sadler in the story. I just thought it was a cool, unique take and how to introduce the hallucination situation that the plaga that she literally takes is completely different than the other plaga that most of the Los Illuminados has. I thought that was a really unique take, and it was a cool introduction to the boss / U3. Wesker being more introduced and more like engrossed in the story was a little bit awkward at times. Like, why are you even here, bro? Like, shouldn't you be on your boat? But I kind of liked more of the physical interaction instead of like, oh, I'm just gonna be a super like I'm gonna be a Bond villain. I'm just gonna call you all the time. No, I'm gonna actually, help you out and like take care of some fools because I kind of need you to do some of the stuff. I can't be always on the field. Because Wesker's like, oh, I'm a mastermind, but I'm not going to be losing some of my assets. Like, I need you to do this because your skills are kind of different than mine, even though I'm a super-powered humanoid. I have my weaknesses. And the fact that I can't, be around everything, like leaving evidence and traces of myself, because then I'll be a target. I kind of need a secret agent to do the dirty work. I thought that was cool how they ingrained him. I think the voice actor / the personality that Wesker has is it's less cheesy. It's more like super villainy, but I kind of dig it, and I love the gruff voice and his design overall interacts better. I think he has a little bit more presence than the original, which is nice, I think we'll talk about it later, but I think it sets up a nice precedence for, the next Resident Evil remake. As for Krauser being like he defects, it's sort of unclear. It sounds like Krauser was never with them in the first place. He wasn't with Umbrella. He seems like more of like, oh, he actually was just a crazy major veteran who just went crazy from PTSD and losing soldiers and joining Los Illuminados. It seems like he was a completely separate entity than Wesker and Ada, because it sounds like even Lewis didn't even know about him. But that makes a little bit more sense because he was kind of out of the loop. It just seemed like more like Ada and Wesker didn't know who Krauser was, or they knew about him. I don't think they had actual relation. There was no hints, at least from what I played. I do, however, feel like Wesker getting his body to extract the plaga, it really reminded me how he just took Steve from CVX. I'm not gonna lie, I was like, what, is like Krauser the new Steve now? Like he's taking his body and he's gonna fucking use it for Ouroboros, especially since that's how Ouroboros comes from. It's just a strain of Las Plagas. I thought it was kind of, it wasn't funny, but I was like, okay, that's cool how he took his body. Like, oh yeah, because Krauser's body is unique, and the plaga he has is a unique plaga, and I can see that being used differently in future games / Resident Evil 5 remake. But yeah, I just love how Wesker is integrated in the story. I love how the whole story changes was made. Is like Ada has morals and she actually sabotages Wesker, which is really nice, and sabotages some of his plans. Super cool. I really liked a lot of the stories. I don't really have a gripe with any of the story changes, other than it sometimes feels a little awkward some moments, but it doesn't really take away from the characters or the story that's being told. Yeah. Overall, I think it's, in my personal opinion, it's an overall better representation of the story, and the changes they made, I think, benefit the story more. But yeah. Very good, and I'll leave it to Shadow.
All right then, quickfire quiz. 100% is the first person that can tell me when Resident Evil 5 came out. Go on, don't be shy.
I think it's like, is it
1932.
4 years later?
1932.
It's the closest guess I've got so far.
Was it 2008?
2009?
2009.
I think it's
the summer of
Oh, yeah.
Rust in 2009. Is it crazy it's been nearly 15 years since that game came out?
Oh yeah.
I bring it up obviously because this is obviously when Albert Wesker was originally killed and written out of Resident Evil, and of course has appeared in pretty much every single major Resident Evil game, either in passing, cameo, or in person, pretty much since. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's still like one of the most marketable members of the franchise. I mean, you think of like if you just say to someone, "Name me characters of Resident Evil," you say probably Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, and Albert Wesker. That's just the way it is. So, you know, it doesn't surprise me they got into this game. Obviously, he does play his part and operate in the background. I did think it was a little curious at first that they decided to have him kind of like actually appearing in person for some parts of the game. I didn't hate it. It just took a little bit of adjusting. I think just kind of getting a feel for, like, you know, obviously he's technically been this kind of, the mastermind. That's what we know him as. That's what he's known as, like back in Dead by Daylight, for example, you know, kind of getting everyone else to do his bidding. Of course, he could definitely do a lot of it himself, but, you know, he'd rather not to. It's just kind of obviously not particularly his sort of style. I do think, though, his inclusions were, like, fine. Obviously, coming into the sort of the village area to give Ada a hand after getting infected and stuff, and not taking a moment to like get himself some samples of some new viruses on the side. I did also note as well the whole Krauser thing. Definitely, obviously, some vibes of Code Veronica. You know, he's done it once before. He's like, I'll just take the body. You know, it's good enough with me. I can live with that. But yeah, obviously him kind of being a little more prominent was a little jarring at first, and obviously kind of the relationship that develops between him and Ada is definitely one of kind of like of use and of like kind of convenience at times and hired mercenary sort of vibes, but you know, like ultimately that's what he's paying her to do. Although obviously he shouldn't have been surprised that when he starts talking about murdering significant portions of the human population, that maybe there might be some human morality that might have some impacts on your operations. But, you know, everyone's got a fault. One thing I'll definitely also make a mention of as well, as far as obviously there are other pretty significant story changes. As I mentioned earlier, I did, in the lead up for RE4, I did say that I wanted to see the game do a lot more with the hallucination stuff that Leon experiences in the base game, which you know, obviously is like this whole major plot point that, oh, I'm infected and I need to deal with that before I've got, you know, before I'm gonna turn into one of them. And you have like 1 or 2 scenes where he's like starts seeing things, doing weird stuff, and he gets like stabbed in the knee. He's like, oh, I'm fine. I was hoping they were going to explore more of that in the main game. They didn't. Obviously, they left that for Ada, and obviously tie it into kind of the plot that she sees things differently because her form of being infected was different to Leon and Ashley, which obviously makes a load of sense. And I think the effects of it were pretty nice. Playing it into the boss fights, the Black Robe, I thought was pretty novel as well, with the hallucinations and the shadows, and like having to obviously deal with those and tie into the boss fights. I thought it was a creative little way of tying in a plot point into actual gameplay. I definitely thought that was a good decision. One that I was hoping they'd see a bit more of, truthfully told. But you know, I guess you could argue they overplay it a little bit. I also got some real Silent Hill vibes from a couple of the scenes as well, with like the fires starting to appear, the one on the battlements as well, as Vidu is kind of stalking away. You know, there's definitely some real like Alessa vibes going on with that, which is a good thing for me to be saying for sure. As far as other bits I want to make a mention of as well, other story changes, the Krauser stuff, I knew they were going to do it a bit differently, because obviously Krauser has changed a bit from the base game, and they had to change him from the base game, because when the base game existed, Umbrella Chronicles didn't, and then you had that come out, which obviously fleshed out a lot more of his character and his motivations, which is then so you can then tie back to the base game when you do the remake, kind of make everything more sense. It's the same thing with the Dead Space remake. You go back to it, you revisit the same sort of storyline, but then you've got lots of material that you've generated after the fact, so you can now tie that back to make things make a bit more sense. And definitely, him, obviously, the changes they made to him was good. I always thought as well his alignment and the way they did that in the main game, the original, was a bit weird. And, like, everyone was, like, playing both sides, and literally everyone was playing both sides. I think this is a lot more clear cut, a lot more obvious what was going on. I think it was a heck of a lot easier to understand as well. So definitely is that. And yeah, the only thing I'll say again, yes, Lewis, more Lewis, please. More Lewis is good. Having him kind of like tying in his moral dilemma and redemption, and fleshing a lot more with the Separate Ways DLC is something they definitely wanted to see. They obviously teased about that and mentioned about it with the main game, but kind of seeing the crux of that playing out for Ada specifically as well, I think was definitely a nice touch. So, you know, you don't have to put everything up from the base game. Some things they included, some things they tweaked. Definitely some inspirations drawn from a couple of bits and pieces here and there. But yeah, I think it was one of the strongest parts of the game. I think the overall story and tying it into the base, adding some bits here and there, I think they did a really fantastic job of it on the whole. And it was a lot of cool stuff they got to do, and then tying it into the gameplay itself. So definitely, I think they did a great job of it.
Brandon, it's your turn.
All right. I also want to preface this that when it comes to the storytelling in the remakes, though, I personally found them to be a bit of a downgrade to their original counterparts. Set for maybe somewhat Resident Evil 4, I found 4 to be a more of an alternative take to it, a good one for people to enjoy. But that being said, though, in the context of Separate Ways, though, I actually do like some of the changes or new additions they had. Because like we already talked about Louis' death, so I'm not going to bring him up. But him having more influence in the story was actually really good. Now, I actually liked Ada getting affected by Plaga. I thought it was actually one very cool idea and very new. But what I took issue with is how quickly they kind of discarded it. I granted her campaigns were short, so they kind of had to, for her to get it and for her to lose it almost immediately. The story, the way it was like, how I put it, set up, and then for her to get cured, almost like the story just wants you to forget about her affection because it just came and went. Like they didn't like play around with it. They didn't have her lose her affection in the lab like Leon did. She just killed the source and the Plaga inside her died, which is really interesting. So it makes you wonder though, where did the Plaga samples for Leon actually come from? Was it from Sattler himself, or was it from something else? Because if they could find a source to their affection, they could kill it and be done with it without needing to go to the lab or getting the Plaga removed like that. Which is, I'm pretty sure it was Sattler, right? So, correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Now, Wesker having more on-screen appearance is cool, but I personally don't like it for one reason. If Wesker is actually on the field, why does he need Ada? Because think about it. Wesker is a lot stronger than Ada, a lot stronger than almost any other normal humanoid character, even stronger than Krauser, potentially, right? If he's on the field, on the island doing stuff, why does he need Ada? Because the whole point of Separate Ways is for Ada to go in and infiltrate the area for Wesker, right? Why is she even here if Wesker's on the island? He can literally do everything himself, take care of business, and then get off the island. He really didn't need to hire Ada. So that kind of took away I guess the sole reason why Ada's on the island. Next is Krauser. Now this is kind of like an RE4 issue, but I personally don't like the changes with Krauser. Now I'm not privy to him still working with Wesker at one point. If he was, then correct me on that one. But him just becoming like this crazy war hero, as someone else mentioned, it feels definitely out of place when you take into account of the post vanilla RE4 material we got of Krauser. He was still a duty-bound, honor-bound man, but because of his jealousy of Leon and him lose his arm after battle, he kind of was not having it, right? So it makes sense for his anger to go towards Leon and all that stuff, right? But I was not a fan of him not working with Wesker. But the whole reason why he got his powers is because of Wesker, but now suddenly he just decided to work with Sattler just because X, Y, and Z. I'm not digging that little change personally, though, but not the biggest sin in the world, I guess. And Wesker getting Krauser's body, that was not in the original, right? I could have sworn it was, but it's in character of Wesker because he always liked to get samples himself. So, because if I remember correctly, Ada did not give him a good sample of the plot, so he had to get another one, right? Or get some other means to it. Again, correct me if I'm wrong on that. But him having Krauser's body is definitely reminiscent of his other lines of work because he did the same thing with Steve. He couldn't get the girl, I forgot her name, Alexia, but so he had to get Steve, and the rest was history. But overall, I did actually very much enjoy the story changes for separate ways. Some of them were, I guess you could say nitpicks, but overall, still a really good experience.
Claire, it's your turn.
So I don't have much to say about Krauser because I'm still not familiar with his character, but with Ada's infection, I honestly found that very unique with the way that they had it with her seeing illusions and all that. I thought it was pretty cool. I do agree, hers did go really fast. Like it came and it went when Leon's lasted like for a really long time. So that is something that like I kind of wish that they would have just like let it play out at least a little bit more so they would actually have like more time with her being infected. But overall with her infection, I do like how they did it, like with the illusions and all that stuff. Still think that there could have been like at least something else. And then with seeing Wesker, honestly, I think it's really cool because like you don't see him very much and then like now you see him a lot more with this. So it kind of has me thinking with us seeing him more, I wonder what's going to happen next because I wonder if he's going to be seen like even more with the next one and if he has like a plan. So I'm actually looking really forward to it, to seeing him because I think it's pretty cool because Wes, like just seeing more of him and with him having more screen time, it's very awkward, but also very interesting to see because like you don't know really what like is going to happen, like if he has a full plan that he's thinking or anything like that. So I'm very interested to see what happens with that. But that's like my short answer. It's in their Lucian's turn.
All right, so when it came to the additions on Ada getting infected, I welcomed that in. I really did like that and how they added the hallucinations in with the black robe and such. I love the mini. I think there was only one team up with Lewis actually, but just more of Lewis. I love the mini team ups with Lewis and just seeing him overall just more in the game outside of the base game and that story. I would obviously welcome a Lewis DLC, but yeah, I really don't see that happening. I love the addition of more Wesker. From what I remember in the original, it was just Wesker sitting in a chair in cutscenes. That's all I remember from the original Separate Ways. And Wesker encounters were cool, and it honestly gets me very hyped to maybe get a RE5 remake, which if they're gonna do that, I'm woke. I want it because if it's gonna be co-op, RE Engine co-op experience, like how it was back in the day. Oh my gosh. But yeah, Tolkien.
My answer's gonna be pretty short. I've said a lot of this before, and I'm just gonna piggyback off what a majority of other people have said. I too really love the fact of Ada being infected through the majority of her part of the game. Added quite a bit to the story. It was something new compared to the OG, made the game more thrilling. Nice to be chased by the Black Robe constantly throughout the game, having the little mini cutscenes with him, especially right outside the church. I really enjoyed that part, as annoying as it got in the professional part of it. Having more of Lewis is always great. I was very sad to not have him much in the OG, and then when we got the remake and he was much more prominent, it was very nice to see. And then now he's even more so involved also in Ada's DLC, which is great. I welcome the fact that Wesker was much more prominent in Separate Ways this time around than the OG as well, a bit more involved. So I had no issue with that. But overall, comparing the old Separate Ways to this one, I believe it's mostly improvement all across the board. And I enjoyed it far more than I did the original.
All right, so I'm gonna get right into it with what I think. First and foremost, Ada being infected is fine. I thought it was a nice addition. It added a little bit more urgency to what was going on since she is infected. So she's like super desperate to get Luis to get this ball rolling, which is why she's like, because most people are saying, and I saw this too when the game was like sort of coming out. Most people were saying, oh, why is she so rude to him? Why does she want the amber like so quickly? Why does she want all this stuff? And you find out why later on after those cutscenes, that she really needs this infection to be dealt with as soon as possible, trying to find out all this information while trying to appease Wesker at the same time. I thought it was fine. It creates urgency and business mixing together. I didn't have a problem with that. Now for Wesker showing up more, I guess I'll split this into two things. Like, his voice is fine. I saw people say, why does Wesker not have his British accent anymore from RE5? And it's just like, I prefer knowing that Wesker had an American accent from the original RE1 and carrying that over in the remake one and going forward from there. I'm one of those people that's like, I prefer the way Wesker used to talk, and this is kind of no different. He's very snooty and pissed off all the time, but that's Wesker, so those personality traits are still there. Him being more on the field, I'm of two minds about this. I'm on the one side of the fence where I sort of get why he was in the chair, masterminding everything, being busy with Umbrella, saying my subordinates can go do it. But that's not as exciting as seeing him up close and personal and doing stuff, even if they had to write the entire thing to try to make sense, and sometimes it didn't, where it's like, oh, we have to put his boat on sea so he can run over there real quick, save Ada, and get out of there. The first time that happened, I sort of get why he did that, because it's like, I want my subordinate to, you know, be in tip-top condition, not be in trouble, so I'm gonna bail her out of there and all this other stuff. But the rest, where it's like he's just showing up and he wants the briefcase, and, you know, it's just, why are you here, Wesker? I ask those questions as well, but I know it's 100% pure fan service, and it's a lot more interesting than the original rendition. And I also keep into account that his subordinates are not so trusting in the original, where they want to fucking kill each other. Leon's still running amok, wondering why is this guy still alive, and Ada's not doing her job. It felt like a turmoil, a mess of keeping those subordinates under control in the original, because you never know if they're gonna triple cross, quad cross. It was really that crazy between Ada and Krauser at the end. That being said, all he really cared for was the sample, and eventually he got it from Krauser's body, which is a Steve Burnside move, which is, I mean, it's something on brand for what Wesker could do, so ultimately they made up for it, in my opinion. For the rest of the stuff, Luis still being around a little bit more, yeah, I agree with everyone here. He was great in the main campaign. He is pretty much Ada's humanity, so to speak. That's like her humane side coming out the more they mingle and sort of get along, and she realizes, oh, it's that critical point where he dies and she feels bad about it. I think that was sort of the turning point for her humanity, and it was done better in this game than RE6. I don't care what anyone says. I think when they tried to do that in RE6, it was a colossal flop, where it's like, oh, no redemption, no humanity, all this other stuff, and she
They got the kiss.
yeah, and she's shooting all the cocoons, and her and Carla, they tried to make them sympathetic, and it's just like, you didn't even care for Carla or knew who she was, so why would you feel bad? I don't get it. So I felt it was done way better in this game with Luis than it was in Carla. Excuse me. So the rest, I mean, I liked most of the changes so far. I guess I'll talk about the last two, which is the Plaga and Krauser defecting. So Krauser defecting is kind of just, it is a little weird, but I kind of agree with Shadow that it's very convoluted in the original. It's like, okay, well, You want to stick to what Wesker has, and then all of a sudden it's just like, well, everyone's betraying each other. So what is your allegiance? Your allegiance is the Wesker, and then you're trying to kill Ada, and then all this other stuff is going on. So it's just like no one had their leash on properly in RE4 OG. Whereas this one, it's like he wants power and power absolute, and he'll do, and they kind of alluded to this too, like he'll do anything to sort of attain it. And one thing that people did not pay attention to is Ada's report when she says this, because she even questions in the original, because Krauser wants so much power to get stronger, we don't even know what he'll do. And one of her orders was to keep an eye on Krauser, because if she didn't, she wanted him to like not betray Wesker and actually get the sample and all that other stuff. So they didn't even know what was in Krauser's head originally, which is something they're bringing over to this remake, but it's just being done in full swing. And I thought that was kind of interesting when people pointed that out on Reddit, and I was like, oh, okay, well, so they're taking a previous storyline and they're altering it due to the illusions that Ada had. I'm fine with that. It's fine for the most part. He was sort of against them, and they were against him, and that's kind of how it went. But the only thing I don't like is that they didn't have any encounter in game, and I would have changed it to where they at least fought, as opposed to like Ada chasing him on the island, and you get to him and ultimately he gets away, and you find out that, well, he dies later. So I would have changed that just a little bit. And the last part was the Plaga. It's supposedly not the same one as Leon and Ashley, which is like sort of the prime Plaga that they had, which is why they needed the machine. It was confusing because I'm like, don't the Plagas like attach to their spines when they get infected with them? So what is the deal there? Like, don't you need the machine anyway? So when she just like threw it up, I was like, huh, that's different. Okay. But someone told me it was like a different strain. So I was like, oh, okay, well, fine. I'll accept that. I like the black robe and the changes there and how he sort of showed up. It was kind of a callback to Resident Evil, the hallucination demo for Resident Evil 4 with the prototypes, where Leon was like in the castle, he was hallucinating and seeing stuff. So I'm kind of glad they were integrating that stuff into this game in some capacity. I know we didn't get the Hookman, but hey, I mean, this is at least as close as you're going to get to that sort of idea. And I'll pass the baton over to Gaming Fan.
Honestly, I'm not the biggest Resident Evil person. I do plan on playing all the remakes coming up. I've only played 4 original, 4 remake, and 7, and I kind of know the story of 8. So as far as like other iterations of these characters, I don't really have much to say. But when it comes to Ada being infected, it's such an important like cornerstone of this whole campaign, because Luis's entire involvement is almost partially because of this. Like when she points a gun at him, and he basically convinces her that, well, she's infected too, so she needs him. And obviously the Black Robe, I love that boss fight, both versions of it. Amazing. So if we didn't have the infection, maybe we wouldn't have that either. And Wesker on the boat, I could think of a number. I could come up with a lot of reasons that he has to show up himself. There's still a possibility of him dying, stuff being led back to him, maybe something with the parasite. Like I said, I don't know his character from other games, so I'm kind of like just trying to logic my way out of it, because I'm not sure how powerful he is, but there is always a chance of him dying or something bad happening. So to send someone else in to kind of eliminate any potential important assets being lost is the only real thing I can come up with, because he only shows up once to help Ada, and then he shows up with an extra package for her to use. I'm assuming he only met her with the package later for the sake of simplicity. I don't know. But I'm not sure about his character, so I just kind of leave it at I don't care because he's cool. He was cool. I loved his voice. Just seeing him more was just really cool. The Krauser thing, I'm glad we didn't fight Krauser. I already said all that, but as far as his body being there, he didn't die till later, so it makes sense that he would no longer need the amber that Ada was going to deliver him. So it just all made sense, right? The story stuff made sense, and since I'm not like a Resident Evil 4 OG diehard, like it was great. I loved it, but I don't care that they changed some things. I can only say that it's like, yeah, I like these changes. I thought I had something else to say on that, but I can't seem to remember. But the infection was definitely worth implementing because it just kind of brought back so much of that, so much more story for us. Because without it, the story would have been kind of boring. Like, imagine if she wasn't infected, it would have been basically just her chasing Lewis around with the amber for like 5 hours. We may not have had some of the boss fights. It's just, it was basically, in short, very welcome change. Thank you, game. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Looping back to Rin.
All right, so we're moving on. I'm going to try to keep my answers short for this one, but this is about all the boss fights and enemy encounters. So what are your thoughts on them in separate ways? We'll go with Austin first.
Alrighty, thoughts on the boss fights and encounters in separate ways. I've pretty much alluded to most of the conversations we've had, but they had the balls to throw you, like, if you haven't played Resident Evil 4 Remake and ever since it came out, you're coming to this brand new, like, okay, let me get adjusted, let me just like start it up, boom, get into it. They throw you in the first fight is a boss fight. I was literally like, okay, oh, we got the Blacktail, sweet, like the best handgun, and and you got the TMP, like, okay, good, and then boom, boss fight. I'm like, holy crap. This is how you start a freaking DLC. It's just like, oh yeah, if you haven't played the game in a while, here you go. You're just gonna throw you right in the deep end. And yeah, I think I died, like, I think once or twice the first boss. I played on hard, by the way. And yeah, I was pretty excited. I was like, this is the start, cool. And then the second boss fight is literally a rematch between the Black Robe U3, and it's literally has like 3 times more hit points. It has slightly more damaging attacks. It's like frame data is different. Like, I watched the videos that somebody showed, like, oh yeah, like the boss fight is actually different in terms of not only has more abilities and more like attributes, it's stronger, it does more damage, it's quicker. It even has a stronger like illusion clones. I was like, okay, that's cool that they improved upon it. In my personal opinion, the third time that you have the hallucinations, which is at the castle, which is when you get the treatment for Ada, or like the suppressant, I wish that you should have fought the Black Robe again, like a third time, but like it's another different fight where at times you're actually like not affected by the hallucinogen and doing stuff. I think that was probably a potential boss fight, like a potential boss fight that could have been pretty cool and how they could have done it. But overall, I thought that was fine. I honestly, I might be just blanking out pretty hard, but I think the only boss fights in the game were like mostly down to like mini bosses and the Black Robe U3. I don't think there's anything else other than Sadler. Other than
There was
Sadler.
an El Gigante rematch.
That's right, El Gigante. That was also a good one. Thank you for that. Yeah, El Gigante, and the fact that you can use your grappling hook as a motion to fight this fucking hulking creature monster. Sorry for swearing. This hulking monster. It was so cool because you're like, all right, I'm just gonna be Batman. Let me just be Batman in this fight and just screw this thing up. It was super fun, super cool. I very much enjoyed it. That was a really dope fight. And then I think the next fight is against U3, if I remember correctly. You fight U3. I think, again, I've said this before, I think the prelude to the U3 fight was kind of rushed, or like not really rushed, but like we could have had a better setup. But I thought the boss fight, I thought it was fine. I liked the attacks it did, and that you could dodge it, and it's not like the super one-shot monster. It had new abilities. It would shoot stuff at you, and you had to like dodge it or shoot it or try to evade it and fight this creature. There was some unblockables that you literally had to like move out of the way, otherwise you're getting either grabbed or hit by it. They try to include some more stuff, like some more gameplay mechanics, like the gameplay mechanics in the base game to the fight. I think it was fine. I personally think that the second phase was, in my personal opinion, way better than the original. If the first phase in the remake, I thought was kind of on par with some of the annoyances of the original. I think the remake did the second phase better because it literally is it's like detached, but it's like carrying the like crumpled body of the host, because you're literally fighting the plaga that was inside. I can't remember the woman's name that is U3. It starts with a P.
Placenta.
Jacinta. Thank you. I thought that was cool. That it's, you think like, oh, I just detached from body. No, it's literally still attached. It's just like the body like literally is smaller because the plaga was literally the meat and bones of the body, pretty much. It was a really cool fight. I like that it had a weak spot. It really reminded me of Tremors, which I really liked. It was like going through the ground, clawing around. It was like it was a really cool boss fight. The only thing I disliked was that it used a scream to call the bugs. I was like, okay, so you're gonna let me fight an annoying enemy type during this boss fight, which you have to pay attention and see its tells. I'm professional. That shit was fucking tough. Again, sorry for swearing, but that stuff was super tough. And oh my god, I literally had I didn't rage quit, but I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to fight this thing on professional. And I did a setup, and I was like, okay, this works. Because I literally had to do a save before the fight, and I was like, okay, gotta do this. Second phase on professional is annoying, but it was still super fun. Probably the best boss in the game. And then we get to the last boss, which is Sadler, which, just like the original, except for he has new abilities. It's actually cool that it just reminds me, like, you never fight Sadler in the base game other than his final form. And Ada fights him in his like humanoid form, which is actually done a lot better. Although there's a lot more gimmicks to where you have the parry system, the evade system, and like using pillars to hide. I thought the fight between Sadler and Ada was cool. The fact that you can use the grappling hook to do melee attacks against Sadler was really cool, and that you get a unique animation for killing him by using the grappling hook knife animation, which is super cool. Overall, I think all the boss fights were dope. I think that they could have added one or two more like mini bosses, like adding, because since they didn't have Krauser, they could have added something else like another U3 fight, or just I know they added regenerators and stuff, but I think they could have been something different or unique they could have added. We did have the whole lab monster, but that was kind of just like a gimmick more than a fight. So overall, I think the boss fights were fine. They were great. They could have had more, but what we had was fine. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with what we had. On to Shadow.
Shadow, are you there?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think he left. Oh, there he comes.
Oh, okay. He must have dropped for like a bit. Shadow, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, it's your turn. What do you think of the bosses?
Yeah, Discord's been a bit dodgy today. It occasionally just like reboots itself. I actually reckon they did a pretty decent job with the bosses overall, even if personally one or two of them I didn't have the best of times with, but I put those a bit down to me. I do think obviously Passanta, the black robe, fighting it, obviously kind of like being in combat with for a lot of the story of the game was obviously cool. This was alluded to in the base game for those paying attention, that you got to the robes along with Salazar, and then all of a sudden one of them just disappears for no real explained reason. And obviously this is why you were going to fight him in the DLC. So I appreciate obviously the continuity of that as well. I've talked as well about like obviously using story elements to kind of obviously explain stuff going on in the game, and to give lore behind game mechanics of the whole, like, find the real one and shooting, that sort of stuff. This game definitely has a few callbacks to previous parts for other Resident Evil games, and this definitely has a lot of vibes of Jack Norman from Resident Evil Revelations, if any of you remember that boss fight. I don't know if any of you do or not, but from what I remember, you think back to Revelations, you remember two things. It was on a boat, and oh yeah, there was that dude that did the teleporting stuff, and yeah, people enjoy that. People enjoy it as a game mechanic. It feels fun. It feels kind of interactive. And you feel kind of like, oh, all right, I was clever for working out which the right one was. But if you do it by just like sussing it out by looking at like what's the odd one out and going for them, or realizing that you can use stuff like grenades and flash grenades especially to weed out the stuff, because I realized you could do that before the game even like told you. I was like, oh, okay, I use some intelligence there, and people like that. People don't want to be hit over the head with like how to deal with boss fights. It's nice to give the players a little bit of agency, and then a DLC to a game which they're going to assume you've probably already played, it makes perfect sense to allow that kind of agency to the player. So I definitely thought Black Robe was fun. I might argue, I think the opening fight with Black Robe might be my favorite boss fight of the game. Again, I like the punchy nature of just throwing the player into it. Not beating about the bush at all. Resident Evil 4, the base game, I think has a pretty lengthy lead up if you think about it, getting up to the the whole village chainsaw section, which obviously is coming. The game, has a healthy lead up to it. It's just like, you bust Lewis out of jail and you're right in the thick of things, which feels very much very Ada Wong sort of thing. Then later on, obviously, we do get into other fights as well. El Gigante. I like the idea of like having like a semi-destructible environment to fight in, and if you can have anything like that, having it with the Gigantes makes pretty logical sense. So I thought it was a nice idea to do it. I personally had a lot of issues actually shooting the damn thing when I first played it, though. I actually ended up redoing the boss fight off screen in my recorded run, because I missed so many shots trying to hit it properly in the first round and trying to shoot the Plaga when it comes out of the back. I don't know why. I just really struggled with it. Maybe it was the way that it was rendering, or I was just not playing very well, whatever reason. But I'd have to go back and fight that. But again, it was a nice idea. Fighting Pasanta, in terms of U3 itself, is one of the harder boss fights I've done for a while. I mean, I beat it first time without dying somehow. It used virtually everything that I had. But it definitely feels it's a pretty tough fight, and I can definitely see if people have gotten to that situation without a lot of supplies, I can see that being a very roadblocky for some players, especially if you've not played a ton of Resident Evil games. You're not able to kind of like craft your way out of that situation. It's made a lot easier in the second form when you start obviously having the Navistadors dotted around, which not only can you kill, but the U3 has a habit of killing to just give you supplies anyways. So you can kind of brute force through that section if need be. But I definitely think that opening section, there's nowhere to hide, there's nowhere to run about, there's no gates to shut, there's no barrels to shoot, really, anything like that. You're kind of just left to your own devices, and I think that can be a bit overwhelming for some at first, and can definitely see people having some, if they've not upgraded their equipment correctly or just kind of run themselves on the ground at that point, I do worry some people would really struggle to get through that section. I do want to make a special nomination. It's not a boss fight per se, but the run-in with the Garrador in the ambush at the end of the sewers was particularly nasty. The game just like, oh yeah, you remember these dudes? Yeah, you freaking should. Cool section. Those sort of things are always cool, because again, you can kind of use a bit of nous and a bit of kind of like game intelligence to kind of like get through situations. It was something you could do originally with the double Garrador fight in the base game. Some people realized that a good way to get around that was to use the crossbows, because it beeped, and that beeping would actually lure in the Garradors and cause us the carnage. Obviously, you don't have that in this version of the game, so it's a bit tougher. But you've still got grenades, and you can still do bits and pieces. But still, I think was fine. Then you have obviously the test subject section, which wasn't really a boss fight. I don't think you can really call it. It's more of like an interactive scene sort of thing. But obviously, kind of the whole behavioral section and reading the notes, like, yeah, there's people up to crazy plans again. Obviously, I'm pretty sure everyone must have tried fighting it first time. I'm pretty sure everyone died to at least once, so I don't feel too bad about that. But I thought the way it was kind of built up to was definitely pretty cool. I kind of wish you could have done a little more with it. I would have been okay with like being stuck in like a sort of central area and just having to avoid it for like a minute or so, while like powering computer and waiting for like some doors to open, something like that. Maybe using a grapple hook to help get around. I think that would have been a nice addition to the game. They didn't do that. It's fine. They didn't have to. but I think they could have done maybe a touch more for it. And then you have the Sadler fight at the end, which obviously brings up the history of Ada fights Sadler when he's more humanoid. And I do recall his fight in the base game in professional, especially being really brutal. I don't think this fight was anywhere near as hard, but he's got some nasty stuff. He can get you caught in some odd spots where you're not able to defend yourself properly. But he still retains some nice additions of like using kind of the technical stuff. You shoot him enough time, he starts firing back at you, and all that sort of cool stuff. So I think the bosses, they did well. I think they generally complemented the game pretty decently. And of course, in the case of the Black Robe, tying it into the game's plot more. Even with Gigantia as well, I had to like take it out so it didn't end up fighting Leon at the house defense, that sort of thing. I think they did a good job. I think they're all pretty fun to deal with. None of them were excessively brutal or anything like that, which I think was kind of the way with Separate Ways in the base game. The Krauser fight as well could be really awkward as Ada, because I just didn't think she was quite as equipped to deal with him. But yeah, I think they did a pretty decent job.
All right, Enderlucian, it is your turn.
Claire, I think it was.
No,
Right?
she's skipping this one.
Okay, gotcha. Well, for the boss fights, the Black Robe, I really like that one. It was very interesting. It literally threw you right into the boss fight. And yeah, I just really liked it. The second Black Robe encounter, that one was in the village. That one was basically the same one, just more phases. And I welcomed it. Same with the El Gigante. That one, wow. That one on professional took me like 20 minutes or something. It was crazy. But yeah, just being Ada, being able to use a hook shot with the El Gigante. I really like that one. And was it U3? U3 was very interesting. I was like, when I started my first playthrough on hardcore mode, I was very bad at that fight. I died so many times. I think it was the dodging. I was not timing it right, and I'm not looking forward to it on a professional, though I might be better than I once was. Though I thought there would be more with U3. I thought like it would be in the original, like how it was in the base game. I thought it would be like in the where's in the cages or whatever. I thought I spotted that in the trailer. I guess not. But yeah, that fight, I like that one. I kind of wish it was longer though, because you can get it done fast if you just deal tons of damage. You're just good at it. Oh no. Then we have the test subject in the laboratory. That one was, I mean, it wasn't really a boss fight. That was very interesting. It was a lot of running. Then you basically just kill it with the lasers in the laser room, just like dodging. That one was cool. And then last but not least, we have Sadler. That one the pillars. The pillars. Well, sometimes with that one, it could be quite buggy. You would be like behind a pillar and Sadler just hits you and kills you through that pillar. It's crazy on hardcore mode. I don't know how it is on professional yet, but sometimes I was struggling on that one because I was just struggling to hit the block in his mouth. I'm just really bad aim, I guess. But yeah, all the boss fights, they were good. I really liked them. And yeah, Tolkien.
Well, hold on. It's Brandon's turn because my Discord glitched out. So we're gonna cycle back to him and then Tolkien.
All right. I'm probably gonna be the odd one out here though, but honestly, I don't think Resident Evil 4 Remake had particularly outstanding or great bosses, especially in contrast to Capcom's previous work. But in the context of Separate Ways, the only fights I truly enjoyed was the Black Robe, or U3 and the Black Robe and El Gigante. El Gigante in particular, because I love the fact that you can use the environment to just get away from it and of course shoot the parasite. Because honestly, fighting the El Gigante as Leon was not that much fun for me. Wasn't all that exciting compared to the original. But Ada, thanks to the new layer of using the environment to traverse around and get away from it, that added so much joy to the fight that I'd be happy to do that fight again. As for a black robe, I love the gimmick of using the hallucinations as a way to cop block you from doing anything, basically. So you can't escape the room, or you gotta be careful of seeing all these dudes coming in and trying to attack you. Reminds me of that meme with the 7 tall dudes and that one woman sitting on the couch. You know.
What the fuck? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, so it reminded me of that meme. So yeah, I enjoyed these 2 fights. Now, U3, I did not like this final form in the original. I still don't like it in the remake. U3 should have been deleted, personally. I never liked them. I still don't like them. That's just me. I know I'm out on that one. And now, granted, a part of it was because my first experience was not the greatest because I came in a little unprepared and a little under health. But even after subsequent fights, so I personally didn't enjoy it as much as, say, Verdugo and Leon's campaign. But the worm portion of the fight, it was different. But I wish the freaking evade mechanics worked properly, because if you move slightly while you're trying to press circle, the game wouldn't register it properly. I'm sure I'm not the only one that has experience where you're trying to evade attack and the game does not register it. Because it happened to me a little way too often during U3 and the worm fight. By the way, fuck those bugs. Now on to Sattler. So I'm not gonna say much about the about this fight, because why? I never fought him legit. I always use the rocket launcher and I blow him to oblivion. I had so much PTSD fighting him in the original separate ways that I refuse to fight him here in Remake, because I have a feeling that he's gonna be a pain in the ass, and I'm glad I didn't, because judging from everybody else's experience about the fight, apparently it's a little buggy with some of the pillars. So yeah, I'm just gonna blow him away with the rocket launcher every time and call it a day. So I'll go ahead and give my turn to Token. I think she's next.
Right. So for me, I think the bosses were okay. Not a huge fan of them. I did really like, as others have stated, the Black Robe fights, because it was obviously not in the OG. It was very different. You were not expecting it. As Austin said, you had it right out of the bat as soon as you started the game, and then subsequent times after that, and he came back. I totally could have lived without having El Gigante and the double Gyarados in the sewers on Pro. You best believe when I got to that section on Pro and I saw 2 behind that wall, I sat there for a second and I had to do multiple double takes. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm seeing double for some reason. I don't remember there being 2 on my standard run. I was like, this is different. And I was stuck there for quite a bit of time on Professional. It was awful. So the U3 was obviously nice to see, as everybody knew once they finished the base game of the remake that it was not in there. So of course everybody was like, oh, it's going to be in the DLC. It was. As I said before, I was totally okay with not having Krauser put in the DLC after going through the U3, 2 Gyarados, and Saddler at the end. I could not imagine how much more annoying it would have been to then include a Krauser boss fight on top of that. No, I would not have been pleased with that. I'm glad it was left as a Leon only thing. And I think that's part of why I was not very impressed with the boss fights, because majority of them are boss fights that are shared. If you play the base game with Leon, almost the same boss fights as you have, just a little bit different with Ada. You both have El Gigante at some point. They both have Saddler. They both have double Gyarados. So like Leon had Krauser and several other entities, while Ada had U3, which used to be Leon's in the OG. So that's why I think I really enjoyed the Black Robe much better, because it was different and it was not something Leon had to deal with himself. As Enderlucian said, like, the frickin' Saddler boss at the end. I had no issue with this man on standard. It was not hard to beat him, even with the several glitches or issues that should not have happened. It was okay, but then once I got to my pro run, and this man be hitting me through pillars, I'm just like, okay, what is the point of these pillars if this man can hit me through them? Or the stun locking was absolutely atrocious. Like, I don't know what it was. Like, I had the same issue when we had the podcast for the base game several months ago, that the stun locking is bad sometimes. This guy would come teleport next to me, hit me, and before Ada could even recover from the stagger, he would hit me again where I cannot move from the previous hit. And he's hitting me a second time, and I'm dead instantly in pro. And I'm like, what is this? So you best believe after a few tries of that, I said, fuck this shit. I bought a rocket launcher and blew his ass sky. I was like, okay, I'm out of here. But other than the black robe, the other bosses encounters were okay, except for the one in the lab. I did really enjoy that one. I did not expect it. And the chase with him was definitely thrilling and scary for me. But other than that, that is all I have to say.
Alright, so I'm gonna go real quick. I'm not gonna make this too long. Black Robe, I like the fights between both of them. It's like Shadow said, he kind of reminds me of Jack Norman at the end of Resident Evil Revelations 1, where he's like all teleporting everywhere, and you gotta find which one is real, which one is imaginary. It's pretty much a big callback to that, which, I mean, it's handled well, and I think Revelations fans, that's the first thing that they noticed, that's the first thing that I noticed, and I really marked out, and I called that out when I was talking about it in stream. I thought it was really fun and interesting. El Gigante, you know, I'm not really the biggest fan of El Gigante in this game because I kind of feel like it's harder to hit the Plaga. I don't know why. I just preferred it in the original where you could just like climb on top of him and slice that thing into ribbons, as opposed to, oh well, now you gotta shoot the Plaga on the back and he's moving a lot. If you don't have a flash grenade, it's a hard time. It's not the worst thing considering the buildings are there to sort of help you get a better angle, but still, it's not really the most impressive fight. It's kind of meh and just there, in my opinion. I would have preferred something else. As for Placenta U3, the first form was piss easy. I think I stole Roombee's, I think I stole her strategy where it was like she walked up to U3 and she just kept shanking him in the face and he could not do anything. Like, literally speaking, the first phase, you can beat that phase with a knife on normal, hardcore, and professional if you have enough. Just walk up to him, keep shanking him in the face, keep blocking his little attack that he does. He does like a little jab. You block that, keep stabbing him, and I guarantee you will get to the second phase immediately. The second phase was kind of, it's funny, another YouTuber I watched, his name is John Griever, he said this was the Gravedigger actually in RE4 Remake, but not in RE3 Remake. So I was kind of laughing super hard about that because I was thinking to myself, yeah, this thing it kind of looks like a worm now. So yeah, they actually properly put in a Gravedigger fight, but it's in the wrong game. That being said, I still enjoyed it for what it was. It was just, the only thing I hated about this battle was the scream. And I don't know why, but every time it screams, I get hit. And I have not figured out how to properly avoid that. I figure you might be able to not get hit if you're very, very, very far away from him. But when he screams and you're up close, you're taking damage. I just never avoided it. So it's very interesting that way. And I have to experiment more in the fight as I play on harder levels, so to speak. And then Sadler was, I'm just not gonna lie, he was kind of whatever. I just whipped out the RPG and killed him because when I noticed that he was taking up so many bullets and my entire inventory was like almost gone, I was like, okay, I'm not wasting all my ammo here. And then at the end, I have to fight like 10,000 bugs and soldiers and creatures, so I'm just gonna get the RPG and kill him because that's like the fun thing to do. And as for the test subject, as they call it, it's not really that much of a boss. It's just more like a creature feature, which is still dope in a way where they show it and it's like you walk into it, you die instantly, and you still gotta crawl your way out and it's still chasing you. I thought that was fine, but my sentiment is still the same as other people where they're like, I wish this could have been just a little bit more longer than necessary. And that's my opinion on the bosses. Also, screw the Gyarados. And if they put like 2 Gyarados on professional, I'm going to rip someone's eyes out because I already had enough of them in the base campaign when you had to deal with them in the room where you have to go chase Salazar, I believe, before that. And I'm like, okay, I have to throw like 8 grenades to kill this thing. If you're unprepared, you're not gonna know that, and it's gonna be a hard time. So I don't like double Gyarados at all on Pro, and I'm not gonna like it here either. Moving on to Gaming Fan, what do you think of the bosses and encounters in RE4 Remake for Separate Ways?
Did they? There was only one Gyarados. I thought. Did they add a second one in professional?
If you play on professional, yes, it's 2 Gyarados. It's 2 of them.
Ah, okay then. I'm just gonna pretend like I didn't hear that and continue on. I didn't ask the question. I didn't get the answer. I loved pretty much all the combat in this game, and I disagree with pretty much any mid sentiments, just because I feel like the bosses in this game are an overall better package than they were in the base game. Because the base game, I think you had more like gimmicks, kind of like you had the whatever it's called in the lake. I almost remembered its name, the harpoon thing. You had the Verdugo is kind of a gimmick-ish, depending on how you fight it. And I don't recall all the base game bosses off the top of my head, but they felt more mid in comparison, but I still love those fights. But in separate ways, they feel like a much more fun package. They utilize the mechanics better, I think, with the opportunities you have to dodge and actually parry. Some attacks from some of them are questionable. The second phase Black Robe fight in the village, I don't like that you have to parry the clones to get them to disappear. I think that's a bit excessive, especially since on professional you have to perfect parry. A bit much, I think, for difficulty, but other than that, I don't have any issues with any of the fights. The actual encounters themselves, I love how they just throw you into the deep end. Like you're in there, and already there's like 3 catapults outside just like shooting fire at you, and they just throw you at the army. And then the part with the 2 chainsaw people coming at you at the basement where Leon and Luis were captured, that was like a huge there were a lot of difficulty spikes, and I loved it because it wasn't so hard that it was infuriating, and like the amount of times I barely got out with like 1 hit left was just so fun and like exhilarating. Like you run out of healing items, you're just like on the edge of your seat. It was so fun. I noticed there were a lot of chainsaw enemies this time around, which was weird. But I guess they have a lot more of those pighead things, whatever they're called, the guys with the rapid fire arrows that can be kind of annoying. I think they just had hammers when Leon did it. But as far as specifics, I loved the El Gigante fight personally. It was way bigger, I believe, than Leon's El Gigantes, and I love just like forgot who said it. Can't remember if it was Austin or Shadow, but like just being Batman. I loved that. Let me look real quick. There was the I didn't mind the Gyarados, although that part was definitely very hard, but I've not played on professional yet. But I also fully expect the hardest difficulty to be full of crap that will just instantly kill you. That's been the case for every game since like 1950. So, and as far as the U3, I just really liked the fight. I just thought it was a really solid fight that utilized mechanics well. Sometimes shooting the mines at you felt like, okay, how am I supposed to dodge this? So I don't look forward to that either. And the worm, I'm just going to call it the worm because it's easier, but the worm Plaga would sometimes just show up right on top of you and you don't really have an option to dodge it. It's not like an evade thing. It just digs down, pops back up. Really annoying, but like, these are all things I kind of expect every boss to have in these kind of games. Same with Saddler. He's got a lot of attacks that seem undodgeable. I've not had any problems with the pillars. I'm assuming just standing a little farther away from the pillar would solve the issue. So I'll try that whenever I play. And then there's Carl. I love that guy. It was so satisfying seeing him get taken out by the lasers. But I have to imagine he might have been a planned boss, and then they had to settle for quick time events, because that's been the history of a lot of boss fights in previous games, where like they wanted to implement them but didn't have time, so they kind of just threw it off to the side as this little set piece. But I think I love Separate Ways more as like a quick pace to the action. It doesn't have a lot of slow moments like the base game does, like the lake areas, like the big open areas that have a lot of wandering around. Like if you want to get in on some boss fights and get in on the action, going in on Separate Ways is definitely the way to do it. And that's why I love all the encounters and stuff. It's just non-stop action and fun pretty much, especially if you just like skip the cutscenes and run through it for a challenge or whatever. But that's pretty much why I love this whole DLC. Like there's story parts I love, but then the encounters and bosses are just top tier in my opinion. I think I like them better as a package than the base game. So I guess I'm on the complete opposite end of the spectrum for that one. Anyways, cycling back to Ren.
I hate that goddamn LG Gaunt. I hate him. But you know what? I digress.
Oh, come on. It ain't that hard, man.
I just hate him, but I digress. I'm gonna move on to the next question. This was fun. So the new unlockables. Now there's a bunch of new unlockables that you get with this update. You played through and got any of these unlockables? Same for Mercenaries, where they have like the RPD Leon outfit. Ada has new costumes that have been redone, like the classic outfit, but a little bit of a modern touch because it's like red and black. RE2 Ada, they have classic Luis, Wesker, and obviously they have apparel upgrades that do different things like infinite ammo. Have you toyed with any of these unlockables so far, and what do you think of them? First, I'll go with Austin.
All right. As somebody who literally 100%ed the game when it first came out, and then every 100%ed it again when the DLC came out, and grinded literally over 20 levels of Mercenaries just to get the RPD outfit. Yeah. Some of the unlockables are pretty cool, not gonna lie. Like, I think they did a nice, in my personal opinion, I still think her original outfit in Remake is better than the Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 4 OG outfit. And mostly comes down to that they kind of messed up Resident Evil 4's original. They just gave it like a really weird, they made it more of like a traditional like Chinese dress, which I don't mind. It looks good. It's not bad by any means. It's just that the Remake just has a solid design that just fits Ada's personality really well. And the Resident Evil 2 outfit, again, very good, just does not translate. Not that it doesn't translate. It just doesn't fit the updated model for Ada, in my personal opinion. And just the way that it just feels out of place. Where like if you put the RPD outfit on Leon, he kind of looks kind of badass. Not gonna lie, he kind of looks kind of badass just running around in his police outfit. Mostly because it's sort of like a tactical gear look. I think he looks a lot better in that than some of his other outfits in the game. But I do think that they're okay. I think they're suitable. It's just that I think the Remake's version just looks the best, and that's what I usually use. But I would say her, quote unquote, her redesign of her original outfit is pretty good. I think it's nice. Some accessories make it look really cool and kind of add some more extra flair. But overall, it's kind of whatever in comparison to her design, her base design. But classic Luis looks insanely amazing. It's honestly, I think I love the Remake design, but the original design it translates so well in this game. I need to use it. It looks so good. It's his classic look. It makes him look a lot more like, it's like he's being pretty much, he took off the vest and he's got more like skin showing essentially. He's less like overcumbered by clothing. And it just makes Luis look way better, in my opinion. I just like the design, and it just translates really well. I think they did a really good job. And then Wesker's suit, just like, oh, it's just Wesker's suit. He looks badass. He's just dark, gloomy mother effer. He's ready to pretty much kick ass and take some names. I like it. Even though I really like his design in this game. His design is actually pretty cool. It's pretty simplistic, kind of like almost like a businessman type of deal. overall, they both look good and again translated very well. The apparel upgrades, they made freaking Ada like a Neko cat with her professional outfit. They gave her like wolf and cat tail ears. It's like kind of because I think they gave similar to Leon in a way, but they gave Ada like a little bit special detail with her stuff because it's kind of crazy with what they did with her apparel wise. I think if I had to say my favorite outfit for like the bonus stuff, it's definitely the RPD outfit for Leon because the RPD outfit in Remake 2 is super good and it's one of the best like redesigns in my personal opinion for his classic outfit. And the fact that you literally have to S rank every mercenaries level with every character, even though that is a bit of annoying to do, it was still really fun to grind those levels and finally get it and use it in game. I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. I wish we could use it in mercenaries because that'd be a really cool outfit, but I digress. And the infinite ammo, that's classic. It's whatever. I think more so I was really excited for the outfits. I think overall they were really well done. None of them were bad. I think they all translated pretty well, some better than others. And it just made me realize that they did a really good job with the redesigns for the remake and how most of them are either better than the original / or on par with the originals in terms of likability and how well they're designed. Yeah, it was pretty good, and yeah, I spent probably a long time just getting everything 100%ed, and do I regret it? Hard to say. I spent a lot of hours, but I'm pretty happy with all the accomplishments I made on it. So I'll leave it off to Shadow then.
I don't have much to say, truthfully. I'm not really at the stage where I really chase after too much of that stuff. But I'll say it's always nice to obviously throw in like some of the old costumes and such. It's something they've done anyways with all of the old using the charms being the old models from Resident Evil 4. So it makes sense to kick into that. Like personally, I was always kind of partial to Ada's dress in the original RE4. It was kind of a bit silly, but at least I like the design of it. Was really cool. So it's nice that they kind of threw that back in, even if it made not obviously the most sense of it. But yeah, I don't have too much to say about it. It makes sense. It's always a nice way to kind of acknowledge the past a little bit and whatever else. Why not chuck them in? Seems good enough to me.
All right, Brandon, it's your turn.
All right. Okay, so the only things I haven't unlocked was the mercenary costume for Leon. So by proxy, I haven't unlocked new Ada dress and Mafia Leon, I think it was. The other two extra characters along with Wesker and Omega. So I haven't unlocked them yet. And I've not unlocked her cat ears and butt plug for her professional S Plus run yet.
Hey, yo. Hold on. Rewind that. You heard what he said, right?
Hey, yo.
This man is wild.
Throw it out there casually. Throw it out there casually, man.
That's a highlight. Hold on.
I try to be a family friendly channel. I'm not going to comment on that.
All right.
I'm gonna
calm
sort back out of this one.
yourselves, Sort yourselves and move on.
Never.
My Discord broke at a bad moment.
Don't worry about it, man. I said nothing.
I'm
It's fine.
attempting not to.
Yeah, just let him continue.
Yeah, so that's all the things I haven't unlocked. Now, the stuff you usually unlock is pretty standard. You get your costumes, you got your, special unlockable weapons and whatnot, right? I just wish Ada had something that was a little bit more unique towards her or completing something. Because, again, everything's pretty standard, right? But that said, though, the stuff you don't unlock, like the costumes, I love Ada's new dress design from her RE4. I personally prefer this one, actually, over the over her original appearance. Because the one thing that I am kind of mixed on in RE4 Remake is this sense of style that the characters have. Because to me, Resident Evil 4 probably had one of the best stylized looking characters ever in a series, or a game in general. So some things didn't necessarily translate to my likings in the remake, but Ada's new redesigned dress was stellar. Absolutely loved it. no, it's definitely better than the original. Look at my opinion. Lewis, I am sticking with his classic outfit to a point where I forgot I had it on because I thought it was actually part of the game. And Wesker, his black coat outfit, really enough, then doesn't look right in the game, in my opinion. Almost like they ripped it from Vanilla RE4, just put it into the game. So maybe if I use it more and look at it more, maybe it'll grow on me. But I'm not a big fan. I actually like his new design a lot more than his recreated design from original RE4. Don't have much to say because the mercenaries question is up next, so I think I'll go ahead and end my turn.
All right, Enderlucian, it is your turn.
Alrighty, so unlockables. I love unlockables, especially the additional characters, because more characters, more loadouts. You can have more fun. So unlockables like the RPD Leon, Ada's dress. They have, yeah. I hate how I want to get all the characters on S++ on all stages. I don't think that's required for RPD Leon, but I've been doing that and I'm so close to getting it all. I think it's that last stage. I have it on PC as well, so I can just mod it, but I just like getting unlockables. It's just more rewarding. And that's something the original had, especially with the hand cannon. It was a pain to unlock that. I mean, now it's much easier than it was back then, because I was so much younger back then. And I just liked how 4 Remake brought that back in. And Tolkien.
Okay, so I really enjoyed the unlockables in the base game when it first came out, and I found out you could put like fucking antlers on Leon's head, the cat ears. I was just like, oh yes, if I did not have to get the plat for the game, I was like, I'm getting these cat ears because they are the best thing ever. I even played an additional run after getting the ears just to see them. It was the greatest thing ever. And then so to now have even more unlockables where now Ada not only has cat ears and a cat tail, I have to now go through just to get those because, of course, it's a cat. So I'm just like, get me involved. So I'm really excited for these, and it's also really nice to have the cosmetics as well for those who play the game not only numerous times to get achievements or to check out the other modes, but they're also really nice for those of us who want to do the extra struggle and not only get the S+ on Pro, but also try to get the Plat. So it's nice to have like the infinite ammo or the less melee damage taken or do more damage with this, etc., etc. It's nice to have those cosmetics that can actually give you a little boost you need to get in that time crunch when you need to get that S+. So I'm very pleased with the cosmetics overall.
I'm not gonna say too much. I mean, RPD Leon, it is what it is. It's quite a steep unlockable because it's like the way they kind of did this whole thing is weird to me. I guess that's one thing to bring up. Like, you figure that they would leave the hand cannon to S++ for everybody, as opposed to a cosmetic being like that for RPD Leon. Is kind of like a little bit ass backwards, but whatever. I haven't gotten it yet, but it looks pretty cool from what I see in cutscenes, and I might go for it someday. As for everything else here, let's see. I mean, it's cool that people want to be a cat as Ada, and you know, they'll be like, hey, lube up my wife. I mean, I'm pretty sure some people will probably say that. RE2 Ada looked pretty cool. So did her redesigned outfit. I was calling 4K there. Sorry about that. That threw me off. I broke my concentration for a minute. The Chinese dress looked pretty fine. I like the black and red. It's sort of like a nice contrast. I don't know why there's a lot of people that hate that outfit, but I think it was pretty interesting in my opinion. I thought it was a nice redesign. Of course, would I want them to try to bring in a more classical design? Yes, but this is not bad either. Moving on to the costumes for other people. Luis looks Honestly, I'm gonna say I like classic Luis better. I just feel like the white shirt stands out more than what he had in the base game with the darker colors. And Wesker is Wesker in my opinion. I do think that the turtleneck looks kind of weird on him with the new model, but as I see it more in action, I kind of get used to it. It looks fine for the most part. It's just that initial sort of reaction kind of threw me off a little bit with that outfit. I just wish that you could have gotten that outfit in the classic Luis outfit in Mercenaries, but I digress. And everything else is Peachy King for infinite ammo or upgrades or stuff that you'll use if you go for those higher S ranks. And we'll go to Gaming Fan.
I've actually not received all the unlockables. I've gotten kind of the base ones that you get for kind of just beating it and doing a few of the challenges, but like the infinite ammo thing or like the cat stuff, I don't have any of that. But I don't mind any of Ada's extra outfits. I wouldn't say either one looks particularly better. Again, I don't have any like sort of nostalgia for these characters, so their base outfits don't matter as much to me. But I will say, actually, one thing I care more about than the apparel for Ada is actually the hair colors. Because depending on the hair colors, I swear certain outfits just look a little better. Like the blonde hair somehow makes Ada work a little better.
Yeah, blonde team for sure.
Heck yeah. But I thought that just worked a little bit better. I didn't try Classic Luis. I don't really have an opinion on it. It's just another outfit. If you want it, it doesn't look better or worse to me. It's just another outfit. Wesker, though, I equipped Wesker with his new outfit without remembering it. So I beat this DLC like the day it came out. And then I came back till just last night to prepare for this. And I forgot I had it equipped. And he just, to me, he just like showed up so seamlessly. Like he just looked cooler. He looked more villainy. And I just really like that one. I can't see myself going back to the base design anymore because he just looked so cool with the black on. But RPD Leon, I don't have it. I can't comment on it. I don't really. I mean, I plan on doing it for sure, but I just don't have many comments for any of the other stuff because I don't have it. So back to Ren with the next question.
Okay, we're gonna make a little bit of a shift here because one of my co-hosts, they have to go, which is Tolkien. So we're gonna turn question 7 into question 8. And that's gonna be, well, we'll talk about mercs like last, so to speak. That'll make it better. So there's been this controversy about the DLC being way too overpriced at $10. So I'm sure everyone has seen it where people were like, oh, a $10 DLC, we're getting ripped off, or people have incorrectly said that Separate Ways launched originally on the GameCube with RE4, and I'm just like, no, that was re-released content. What do you guys think of those assumptions and opinions and personal feelings on that matter? And do you think the price is justified for $10 in your eyes, given the controversy? First, we'll go with Austin.
All right, I'm pretty sure I talked with this about Ren in the past with the whole Twitter feed and stuff, and I've know people who have been kind of adamant about it, and I was like, okay, well, why do you think this is bad? And they gave me a really poor answer. I'm just like, all right, I'm just gonna leave this conversation because clearly your priorities are way too different than mine to have this conversation. So good day, I'll be out of here. I'm just gonna say is that $10 for literally what some games are equipped to length and replayability for $10, and you also get, and also the Mercenaries DLC is free, which we'll talk about later. But $10 for essentially the second part of a campaign that you literally had to buy a console and the game again just to play if you didn't have that console. Back in 2000, what was it, 4 or 5 when Resident Evil 4 came out? So yeah. It's a little crazy to me that some people, but by the way, in this day and age where, yeah, $10 for some people is something and for others it's not. But $10 for a DLC that is was, if you think about it this way, Resident Evil 7 had DLC that was like 20 or $30, except for the Chris DLC, that had equivalent to about 2 to 3 hours, but it was like in multiple sets, and those were almost triple the price of Separate Ways. Yet, Separate Ways is $10 and almost equates to the same amount of replayability / equivalent length to those all combined. So I don't know what to say other than it is stupid, and I think the price point was justified, and I don't think people should have made a big deal about it. That is my personal take. I'll give it away to Shadow.
Yeah, I think $10 isn't too bad. I think for what you get, a story it's going to run sort of about like, you know, I'd say ballpark 6 hours or something. I don't think it's too bad. There's some extra bits and thrown in as well with like mercenaries. I'll talk about in a moment. I know one or two people that when I was doing my series were kind of questioning about it. I think definitely if it was a case of there was, say, a lot of kind of reused assets in the game, then definitely that's a question like it could have perhaps posed to folks that maybe not so. But there's some reused stuff, obviously going throughout the village and stuff, bits and pieces again. But there was also some stuff that was not used in the main game as well. So I can't really criticize as far as that. So I also think as well, like $10 is. It's not a ton. You know, I definitely think like back to Resident Evil 3, I guess I'll bring up and say, you know, like that game, if you want to still get that from like Steam, they're still like $40 or something, which is, you know, a much more reasonable chunk of change. I know one person who still feels that RA3 should have just been like a big DLC to Resident Evil 2, and I can kind of understand they're coming from that. So no, I think $10 is fine. I've paid a lot more for a lot worse. You know, even the inclusions of the mercenaries, which, you know, you could say, oh well, you know, it should have been in there, and that's what this all boils down to. You know, people will poke holes and say, oh well, when the older Resident Evil 4, I didn't have to pay anything for any of this DLC, so why should I pay for it now? It's not how economics works anymore. Developers are in a position where they can do this, and they will do it because that's how they make more money. And obviously, while, you know, the original DLC, if you want to call it that, all the extra stuff for Resident Evil 4 was not bad for its price point, which was, you know, having the game already. It's just not that way anymore, and I think people need to kind of realize that. But I think that's where a lot of this comes from, is people trying to use this as a chance to, like, I don't know, like get back at developers and say, you know, we pay too much for content. And whereas I think like a lot of games, I think we get probably a pretty decent price point anyway. So $10, I think $10 for the experience I paid was totally fine. I might argue I think it maybe a better price point than the DLC for Resident Evil Village, which I think was about the same, $10-12, something like that. I'd have to say I probably got more out of this than that.
Next up is Interlution.
All right. So I don't understand. I mean, I guess when it first was announced, because not everybody knew like that this would be one of the best Resident Evil DLCs in a while. But yeah, being $10, okay for me, and maybe not for others, but like I literally got as much content as I did with RE3 Remake, and I spent $60 on that. But yeah, back in the day when as mentioned before, you literally, if you bought on the GameCube, it didn't have Separate Ways. You needed to buy a new system. And then on top of that, buy the game again if you wanted to play Separate Ways. So there was that. So I feel like it was 100% worth it with this price point for this DLC.
Brandito.
See, I understand the sentiment of it should have been there because Capcom has an inconsistent history of DLC practices and having stuff for a game at launch. Because I know Democrat 5, for example, is a probably worst example of having like no post-launch support outside of maybe Bully Palace, but that was already in the game, right? Then you got to go back to the other RE games. RE2 had a game mode cut. RE3 had a game mode cut. So people thought Separate Ways was getting cut or some other things were getting cut, right? So I understand the sentiment of it. It should have been there, or at least in time with the main story. I get it, but I don't agree with it. As everybody else pointed out, that we live in an age where it's easy to get content for a couple of bucks, so $10. Granted, I haven't paid for it because game share was with rent, so I might be outlier here. But I don't have a problem with the price point of it being $10. And granted, you could argue, yeah, sure, certain things out there, certain DLCs that cost $10, you get more content out of it. But that also goes on the flip side where you get less content. I mean, heck, I think RE4 Separate Ways has more content than a lot of DLCs that cost $20. So it will come down to your preference and the value of your dollar at the end of the day, whether you think it's worth it or not. But that being said, though, I do think Separate Ways was worth $10 because, like, think about it, you get so much. You get a campaign that has a longer time attack score than Resident Evil 3 Remake. Let that sink in for a second. Like Resident Evil 3 Remake got roasted again just for existing thanks to Separate Ways for having so much content in it. Like that game can catch a break, so like just keep that in mind. A lot of modern day gamers didn't grow up with some of the older console generations where you need to buy a new version of the game to experience the full package, because it's impossible to do DLC that's not part of certain consoles like the Xbox. You could get DLC from that system or PC side of things when expansions were the most prevalent at the time. So I think people feel a little, I guess, entitled to Separate Ways being cheaper or free because of how RE4, there are more copies of RE4 that come with the game mode than not. Because the only version that doesn't have it, as far as I'm concerned, is the GameCube version, in contrast to every freaking remaster that it has at this point. So that version of RE4 is more accessible than the GameCube version. So from that mentality, though, I could get why people were a little offended by it. But I don't agree with it. No. You get what you pay for, and I think it's worth the quality product. And I'll pass on to whoever's next. I don't care. Bye.
All right, Tolkien, it's your turn. And since you have to leave, I guess you could outro after this.
Sure. So as far as my opinion for the DLC, I think people complaining about it is just dumb. I mean, you can decide if you want to buy it or not. If you don't think it's worth the $10, then don't buy it. Just stop whining. I, in my opinion, think it is way underpriced for what I thought it was going to be. I knew several people that were very shocked that it was anything less than $20, $19.99, however you want to say it. Because it's a Capcom game. It's Resident Evil. I think everybody expected it to be more than that. So I don't understand the whining for it being $10. You're getting a 6+ hour campaign DLC, depending on how you play it. With multiple runs, you've got cosmetics, you've got unlockables, achievements. I think it's well worth the $10. I would have even paid to the $20 for it that I had expected it to be. So as I said, I really don't understand why people are whining about it. I think it's no big deal. But that's just me. Now I'm finished with that. I just want to thank Ren for allowing me to be on this podcast. I enjoyed being part of the remake when it came out all those months ago. I am grateful I could be on this one for the DLC. Had a lot of fun. You guys can find me on Twitter and YouTube at Lady Tolkien. But thank you so much. Back to Ren.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Tolkien. I'm going to give my opinion on what I thought about the $10 controversy. So, all right, I've been in numerous discussions about this, and I'm just gonna be blunt about it. So if people were like, well, I kind of grew up with the PS2 version, so I kind of expected it to be there. Okay, yeah, that I understand that viewpoint, but it doesn't negate the fact that the original copy of RE4 for GameCube did not launch with Separate Ways. And I see people saying, well, Assignment Ada. It's like, well, I played Assignment Ada and it has no story. You're just doing a collectathon. I know it's content gone. And they kind of reworked that anyway into Separate Ways because you're going on a collectathon with a story with Louise, who is an infinitely better character, whereas the original has no characterizations, just that one intro of Ada and Wesker talking and the final outro of them talking, and that's it. And it feels like a giant rework where it's more important as opposed to being like a overglorified 20-30 minute minigame. And I understand, like, some of the stuff will launch with initial versions. Okay, I get that. However, that being said, number one, I feel people saying that it was in the original version really don't understand how good they got it, because if that was the case, we go back in time, right? We had to pay like $50 for like Resident Evil 4 on GameCube. Then moving on to the PS2, you got to pay like about 300, 200, whatever the PS2 was at the time, to experience this new content on top of the game itself, which is like $50. So that's like $350 just to play an extra piece of content. Now it's just 10. It's significantly shorter than what you had to go through in order to get this new version. So $10 really isn't that big of an issue. Honestly, I can go out and just fucking, I can spend more on like a taco these days for more money than buying Separate Ways these days. I know the version I bought on PS2 was like $50. But maybe there was a price cut, but still, that is significantly higher than what it is now. And a lot of RE channels like Let's Talk Resident Evil was sort of pointing that out. Like, we kind of really got it good compared to last time. And I'm surprised as well that the DLC was $10, because Capcom usually makes it like 20. I was like, they did that for Village, and I kind of saw people were like on that game's case. I was like, maybe they'll do the same thing, because Capcom is like, you know, I'm not gonna lie, they're kind of money hungry. So they threw people a bone with this game. It's a lot lower than what I thought it would be in terms of pricing. So that's readily shocking, and it almost feels like you could say it's a sort of a pro-consumer move in a way, because it's like it could have been a lot higher than it is now. And then the other thing is that, well, if you look at it this way, it's like Capcom has put in a lot of content with this game. What justifies the cost when you look at it? So you got like 5 to 6 hours, infinitely replayable because you can go back and play on other modes. Unlockables, you got the Mercenaries characters, which people also egregiously said, oh, because Mercenaries is free, the DLC is going to be free. No, that's not how it works. That was a mistake that people sort of mixed up. And you got the unlockables from that. So this giant update could translate to hours upon hours of gameplay. And the final nail in the coffin is what Brandon said, where he said, like, you think about RE3 Remake, that was a $60 game for less costumes and everything. This game has more costumes than RE3 Remake. Let it sink in, and it really, really starts to hurt a little bit when you start thinking about it. I was like, damn, well, for what we got a lot more than a full retail game that Capcom put out, which is pretty damning. Even a boss that resembles what should have been in that game. So I the way I look at it is just point for point. It's a fun game. It's a fun experience. I think the time made up for it, as well as the content. And it really hurts me as an RE fan to say it's more costumes than Remake 3. It's like, holy shit. And for a low price, it's something you would not expect Capcom to do in a million years, but they actually did it with this release. And I think they knew that they got so much goodwill from RE4. They were like, well, fuck it, we'll make it $10 and see how people react to it. And that's kind of what they did. Now, I'm not going to talk about how their Street Fighter skins are priced. That's a whole different podcast entirely. If you want to talk about ripoffs, you could bring that up. But I think that pretty much more or less resolves my point. Next up is Gaming Fan. What do you think of this whole controversy on the $10 price tag?
I think that I will not be spending full price on the RE3 remake after what I've been hearing. I'm gonna pirate that crap. I don't condone piracy.
It's still $40. It's crazy.
Yeah, I checked it. It's still 40. But I think, in short, the people who are complaining about it being $10 are moronic. I mean, my goodness, the amount of work that went into this whole new story, the amount of motion capture, the amount of, the writing, all these the new areas that do exist, right? And there are some asset flips here and there. They do exist, but like, my goodness, who cares? So much work was put into it. Like you were talking about all that replayability. Just I can't even wrap my mind about complaining about that. I have played games, full games, shorter than that crap. Like during the 360 era, we were getting a lot of these sort of visually pleasing games that were like no length of time whatsoever. What's the Order 1886? The PS4 launch title?
Oh yeah.
Is like less than half of the length of this $10 DLC with like so much replay value. I think The Force Unleashed 2 was shorter than Separate Ways. I think Halo 5 was even shorter than Separate Ways. Like, so many. I just cannot wrap my brain around thinking that that's a ripoff. I just can't do it. I'm going to leave it at that. It's moronic. I'm done here. It's back to Ren.
Oh yeah, I certainly agree. It's like one of those things where you could probably find games with less replay value, less costumes, as we talked about with Remake 3, a lot more. I definitely think, see, all the good kind of outweighs the cons on that, and the price point is one of those things where it's like, it's much cheaper than RE DLC even before it. I'm pretty sure it was even cheaper than getting Desperate Escape and the other one, Lost in Nightmares for RE5. It had to be like $20, I think, or a little bit higher, but still, you're getting a great guarantee for the bang for your buck, and I say, you know, keep it up, because I'm always for games being cheaper if they wanted to be cheaper. It's like, as long as you deliver quality, I'll be there to get those expansions. So
I would still pay $20 for it too, if I'm being honest.
oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's so good I would have paid it, but I probably think that if it was 20, it would have been a little bit more of a critical eye from some people saying that, you know, they did shove mercenaries in there and all that other stuff, but then you can make the argument, hey, mercenaries is free in this game, so there you go. It's like, you know, tomato, but I'm going to talk about the Merc stuff now, where they added in Ada and Wesker for free, and I want to get overall opinions on the functionality of those characters. We're going to start with Austin.
All right. So, not only Ada and Wesker was added, but we got a alternate Ada and a alternate Leon with the update, if I remember correctly, because I had to unlock Mafia Leon. Start with Ada. Ada, she is literally pretty good. I think base Ada is really good. She is technically like a quicker version of Leon, but less powerful in some ways, even though she does have a way better like arsenal with her handgun, and she has the crossbow, which is arguably pretty good in the mercenaries mode. Overall, she's a fast character. She has the least amount of health, which is very prominent because I believe in OG Resident Evil 4 mercenary, she did have the lowest health in Mercs, like very low. She barely had any. Wesker is overpowered, like to a degree that is insane, to the point where like, oh, Krauser doesn't even hold a candle to him, because I main Krauser because he can get pretty insane with his knife attacks because they're very powerful, but he can literally block insta-kills from any of the Salvadors and Super Salvador in Mercenaries. It is insane. He has a very good handgun that does good damage. A little slow, but it's still very good. He has the Killer 7, which is pretty strong. Otherwise, he does not have a knife, but his main ability is insane and pretty much gives him God mode. Yeah, he one of the most fun mercenary characters because he is he is just crazy insane how to play. And then you got Mafia Leon, who arguably is better than base Leon, because just the Chicago typewriter, or the Chicago machine gun, is pretty good. Coupled with his ability, it's pretty insane, and I literally had a way easier time using that gun, even though it does takes a long time to reload. And then we had Dress Ada, which is her Resident Evil 4 original, and that one's a little weirder. I feel like her combination of weapons is she has the TMP, and I feel like the TMP is good in Remake. It's way better than the original, in my opinion. But it definitely was a little bit harder to get used to that variation of Ada with her skill set and her ability, but she does start with the RPG, which is very good too, with some encounters, especially with Super Salvador. But yeah, overall, all the characters are super fun. Wesker is insanely fun, and he's as OP as he was like in the original. Very fun, amazing. Nothing more to say at that point. Take it away, Shadow.
Yeah, I gave the deals the mercenaries a quick spin. I didn't get time to do very much. I didn't record any of it on the channel, but yeah, everything felt pretty fine. I've been pretty critical of mercenaries in the last couple of editions or so when they sort of changed it to like this sort of first person thing, and obviously changing it for the village, which they had to do because obviously village is not designed for the third player stuff, and you know, had to kind of build mercenaries around it. But I didn't really enjoy it at all. I did enjoy Mercenaries in Remake 4, though. I thought it was kind of, you know, it felt kind of a bit more like what it used to be. I enjoyed it a lot more. And yeah, the characters they added in for this kind of go into it. They're pretty strong. They're going to be pretty strong. You know, you're paying extra money. Why not have some people with a lot of strength? You know, which makes total sense. I gave Ada a spin. She was fine. Wesker is pretty entertaining, though. Obviously, kind of going into his whole extra stuff that you can do. Being able to just, like, the fact his overcharge is basically just beating up dudes is obviously pretty satisfying. And his weaponry is actually pretty solid as well. You have to use him kind of carefully, though. He hits really hard, but, like, you've got to be pretty accurate what you're doing. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it for what it was. I think it's a nice addition to it. I mean, Mercenaries anyways, like, it's gone a long way from back in the old sort of days where it was kind of more of a, you know, a game of kind of what's your technique and how, you know, and like how good are you at the game. It's not really so much now. Now it's more of just kind of a basically go in and just beat the shit out of a load of dudes. And have a good time, really. So, you know, I've got no issues with the game kind of trending more in that direction for the Mercenaries. It's totally fine. But yeah, I played the extra characters, and yeah, it was fun. You know, some people are into that thing a lot more than I am. It doesn't really worry too much nowadays, and I haven't had a lot of time with everything I've been stuck into to really kind of explore very much. But from what I played, it was pretty decent. And yeah, if you haven't given Wesker a spin, you should play him at least once, and you have a lot of fun.
Brandito, what do you think about Ada and Wesker?
I would say they're actually really good additions. Now, Ada surprised me actually because she's actually stronger than Leon in terms of raw firepower. She just, I think, a little slower in the reload department, which kind of makes sense to make up for it. But yeah, Ada, she's definitely a lot better than what she was in the original. Now, granted, so was Leon though, but ironically enough, Leon's still probably one of the weaker characters in this one, behind Lewis potentially. But yeah, Ada's definitely got a nice glow up in Mercenaries. I haven't unlocked dress and Mafia Leon, so I won't comment on them. So, but yeah, Ada, love her. Now Wesker is a god. I absolutely love this man. He plays so clean. I love this man. I hope he's like this in Resident Evil 5. Please, Capcom, keep it consistent, right? But that being said, though, like I actually really do enjoy the balancing behind Resident Evil 4's Mercenaries because each character has a particular strength and weakness. Wesker, despite being an absolute unit, he does have one weakness though. He only has two guns. I actually really not predicted this. He's either going to have a handgun and a magnum, or a rifle and a magnum, something like this, some concept like that. His weapon loadout is technically slow but powerful. His handgun only has 10 bullets, which is unfortunate. And reload speed, and I think the fire speed is kind of lacking, is really bad. But considering the amount of power you get behind the character, though, it purposely balances him out. Because Capcom definitely wanted you to use his melee powers more so than anything else. The guns are, for the most part, a last resort. Or you try to play distance between certain enemies, like the chainsaw guys, if you don't want to go ham with the melee, right? But that being said, though, like the balance between all the characters is pretty good. There's two characters that could have been better, but overall, like they did a solid job with the package with these characters and Mercenaries. I don't share the same sentiment as Shadow does with Resident Evil 8. I personally love these Mercenaries, but 4 is definitely a step in the right direction on how Mercenaries should be. It should be a small map, bunch of enemies coming after you, and you going absolutely ham, trying to keep your score up or get the best score possible. So I hope that this is the future of Mercenaries. Give us abilities, improve upon it, innovate, you name it. and I'll go ahead and give my turn to Claire if she wants to go.
Claire, you still here?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, my Discord's acting up.
That's fine. Did you hear the question?
Can you repeat it?
We're talking about Ada and Wesker and Mercenaries and thoughts on those characters and their gameplay.
All right. I mean, I've always liked Ada. She's really, really strong. We all know that. She's pretty badass. Wesker's Wesker. It's really hard to like describe him because I mean he's just like all sorts of just really cool things and all. And then like I don't really have a whole lot on the Mercenaries, but I mean all the characters are like really, really cool and very fascinating.
All
So
right.
I'm gonna give it to Interlution.
All right, fair enough. Interlution, is your turn.
All right. So Ada, I love playing as her in Mercenaries. It's much easier to keep combos because she has a grapple gun actually. So let's say there's an enemy further away, I can just quickly grapple them and keep my combo. And Wesker, I love playing as him. He is God, literally OP. But I've noticed, because I'm probably just bad, especially on the last level they added, Wesker barely has health. I mean, there is health around the map you can grab around, but if you like drain through health, you don't like get any more health. So you just gotta not get hit. And I like the additions with the pinstripe Leon with the Chicago typewriter. It was actually my first time using the Chicago typewriter because I have not played any of the professional mode on the base game, so that was really cool. And same with Ada's dress. The rocket launcher I barely used, honestly, because I just wasn't used to it because she's the only one who has the rocket launcher. But sometimes I'd use it on the Super Salvador, which is an insane enemy, just like the original game. Anyways, that's it.
Okay, so it's my turn to talk about these characters. I did unlock everyone. I don't have a lot of experience with Mafia Leon or the Chinese dress Ada. All I know is that Ada has the RPG crossbow and Leon has the Chicago typewriter. Definitely their loadouts are better than the originals for sure. Like you have a lot more options to choose from. I just kind of wish that they would have done something a little bit more differently, maybe with like their melees or something like that, but you know, I digress. This beggars can't be choosers. However, that being said, they are definitely better than their original counterparts for sure, unless you miss like the handguns, which is, you know, I never really liked Leon's base loadout with handgun and shotgun anyway. I just thought that was just super basic. That being said, Wesker, I'm gonna start with Wesker. This man is a freaking powerhouse. I'm talking, I've done shit on live stream where I've never expected it. Like, I remember the Bella Chainsaw Sister tried to get me with the fatal blow, and Wesker parried and hit the Bella Sister, and I'm like, why am I not dead? I'm supposed to be dead. He can actually parry fatal blows that can kill you. So that is extremely powerful, and in the right hands that will save you from danger, no problem. It is cited with the weakness that Brandon's was talking about, with how if Wesker is running around with a handgun, it doesn't have a good firing rate and you have to really time your shots and it could be a bit slow. But the offset is he can parry fatal blows and do crippling damage to people, and not only that, his sort of mayhem move, you can just keep punching the guy to death for like sub boss material. It's absolutely insane. I also noticed something else. I don't know if it's just me, but I also think with these characters, if you aren't really looking for, because like they don't have any sort of health in their inventory, you gotta go out your way and look and find health, because I noticed with Wesker, like it was times where if I didn't go out of my way and look for healing, then I would get in a situation and I wouldn't have any healing items and I'd be fucked. So that's something you have to be conscious of too, is that you have to go around and find stuff, first aids, green herbs, because you don't have that luxury of having a healing item, unlike some people. And Ada's fine. Like, of course, I still believe, I'm not 100%, but correct me if wrong, I still believe she has the lowest health rate of the game. So, but the only thing that offsets that is that her moves are better than the original, and her handgun and all the other stuff is still pretty good as well to use. So I didn't have much of an issue like utilizing that character and getting S++ on certain stages. It's just you got to be careful how many times you get hit, because she has the lowest health range as opposed to Wesker. It's like mid to good. So the characters were very great in my opinion. I thought they were dope for what they added, and I just think that for the unlockables, it's still, the hand cannon still should have been S++, because that thing is super broken. Oh yeah, and that's one thing that I failed to mention now, since we're talking about stages. Dox is, that stage is awful. Oh, it's awful, because one of the mini bosses there, I think they just plop in like the super chainsaw Salvadors, and it's no indication of where they are. So I was fighting on that stage at one point, and it was like, I think 2 or 3 of them. I turned around, I died, insta kill. I'm like, how did that happen? I know they spawned, but somehow they got behind me. It's the worst thing ever.
Hey, Ray, mind if I cut in real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because the one issue that this game has over its vanilla counterpart is the sound design, or I should say lack thereof. Because in the original, the enemies will sometimes talk or have a distinct sound that lets you know they're behind you, or whatever. This game doesn't necessarily have that as an option. Or not as an option, just a mechanic or indicator, right?
Yeah.
So almost every single time as Salvador's on the screen, he's always behind me, and the chainsaw does not queue up until I at least look at him. That's when the sound comes on. So that's a little annoyance issue I have with dealing with this, with that stage, because enemies will just pop out of nowhere and just attack you, and then you got super bosses just, you don't know where the hell they're at until it's too late.
I agree. There's visual evidence of this too. When I was playing with Leon on stream and I was trying to do the S+ with him, I was like, where's the sound? Because normally the Super Salvadors, you could hear them from yards out in the original. Like they make the screaming noise, and you could hear them constantly do it over and over again. Whereas this one is like, okay, now these guys are behind me and I can't hear them until I actually look at them. That's actually a fault in the design, because it makes it very unfair to get S ranks on that stage. What you kind of have to do is, it's very lame on how to play Dox, but you kind of have to get in like a solid corner if they spawn the Super Salvadors, so you don't get like gangbanged. And I've never had to play that way on Mercenaries ever. It's the first time this game has ever made me do that. So I know I definitely didn't like it compared to the other stages at all. I feel like the other 3 stages fine, the island's fine, castle's fine, except for the Gyarados sometimes, but I just grenade them, and then the other one's fine. But village is like, that's perfect. But this one is like gonna be the hardest to get S++ on for a lot of people, guaranteed. And I'm going to move over to Gaming Fan. Any opinion on Mercenaries whatsoever with Wesker and Ada?
Honestly, it's not with the Dox level. I never really had a problem with it, because he spawned in the same spot every time I saw him. So I don't. And plus, there's visual cues to that as well. So I mean, if they don't make noise before you look at them, that is faulty design. But I never had a problem with it personally.
I mean, here's the thing, that gets hectic if there's only, it has to be like 2 or 3 of them. If it's one, yeah, that's fair enough. I took out like 1 of them, no problem. I saw them ahead of time. But when it's 2, the game starts to get a little bit weird with it, with the sound and where you can't hear them. And I definitely died like twice due to them being behind me and no noise is being made. It's like literally they pulled a solid snake on me.
It never happened to me, but I'll take your word for it, I guess.
I say test it out, because it has happened on like 2 occasions. I'm like, what the, how did you get behind me?
I don't know. But regardless of everybody else, for everybody else, honestly, I did like some of the skinned versions of these characters because I just don't like the full autos as much in this game. It's just it's a preference thing, but I mean, I like the outfits, but the actual full auto weapons, I don't know why. I feel like I'm wasting a lot of ammo when I use them, so I just don't usually do it. But unlocking them was actually really fun, and I'm gonna have one critique actually of this whole thing. Ada and Leon's mayhem mode are the exact same, and that's kind of disappointing. Like, why would Ada not have her own thing? It's kind of just blends them in together, and like maybe some cool grapple animation or something that would insta kill. I don't know. When I saw Ada was the same as Leon, I got really disappointed. But
I agree with you on that 100%.
But everyone else does, so I guess it's not the worst thing ever. But like my dislike for the full autos has nothing to do with the quality of the game. That's just me being me. I'm just being a little nitpicky about it. But man, Wesker, Wesker is so cool. The first time I booted up Wesker, I didn't know what he did, so I parried someone, right, as you do. I noticed he used his fist, and then when I did the melee counter, my eyes just widened. I was like, yo! What the crap? That was the most fun game of Mercenaries I've ever had. Next to playing Hunk as Master Chief with the PC mod, that was also really good. But I mean, great additions. I mean, they were free, right? Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, all the characters, stages that they added in for Mercenaries, all free.
All right, sweet. So, I mean, I don't know what to complain about aside from that one Ada thing. I mean, they're just awesome. I have no real critique outside of the mayhem mode for Ada. A++ or S+, I should say.
S++. Leon S+ Kennedy. All right, so we're
Leon SS+ Kennedy.
yeah,
The third.
That's actually one of the achievements from what I remember. It was pretty
Is
funny.
it really?
Yeah, Leon S+ Kennedy. If you get S rank on RE4 in a certain mode.
RE2.
That's funny.
Oh, it's RE2. Oh shit.
Yeah, RE4 has one with Ada.
Oh
No.
yeah.
Oh, that's lame. Come on.
You should have carried it over, but we're gonna open the floor to questions now that everyone can now talk and sort of converse, and any final thoughts that we have before we end the podcast. Interlucian, I know you had a couple of things on your mind.
What everybody think about the soundtrack? I liked a lot of the tracks that I've heard. I noticed Ada's theme, like a remake type of thing, in that from RE2, because that was originally in RE2.
They
Funny
also
enough, I haven't...
remixed a typewriter from RE4.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was another one. And then there was another track. It was how do you say it? This I'm gonna put in chat. I can't say that.
Infiltration. Oh, okay.
Yeah, infiltration. Yeah, that was a remix track that wasn't like in the base game. That was in the castle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just like the soundtrack.
Yeah, I thought it was fine.
Real quick, you talking about the separate ways or the game in general?
Oh, separate ways.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I can just get my point real quickly. I liked it. You know, it was still pretty good. I still kind of prefer the original soundtrack, you know, for RE4 in general. But Separate Ways did such a fantastic job doing remixes, kind of like how Resident Evil 3 did it, but they're just not as, I guess, grand or memorable in my opinion. But yeah, so it was still a solid soundtrack. I had no complaints about its quality.
Yeah, it's good.
Sorry, go on.
No,
Voice went there. Probably.
oh no, it's fine. No, I was gonna say that it's good. At least, I mean, we've already ranted about this before, and I've already ranted about it. But I kind of didn't like the whole them going minimal for RE2 remake. I just thought that was kind of weird, and there's a few standout like tracks, but it was very, very few. This did harken back to the original, tried to put a little bit of a jazzy twist on certain like sounds and everything and remixes, and I thought Ada's theme being remixed really fit her character for this. It was really great to hear that once again from RE2. So the soundtracks themselves are actually pretty nice. I enjoyed them a lot.
No, like personally, I haven't minded kind of them scaling back the the sort of the audio tracks. I mean, it was obviously like a very much a bigger thing, sort of like in the late 90s going to 2000s, because we don't have as much to be able to show off on the gameplay wise, and your graphics are more limited. You know, you tell the story from the mediums you have available. That's why, you know, obviously like with the, you know, tons of like diary entries and you know, and people writing stuff on walls and that sort of thing is one way of telling a story. And the other way you tell the story is with music and soundtracks. It's not to say they don't do that nowadays, but maybe Capcom just kind of wanted to take that different tone. And I've been okay with the minimalist sort of style. Maybe it was taken a little bit to the nth degree on occasion in sort of like Remake 2 perhaps, and maybe could have done with a touch extra bit here and there, which I think they did with 3, and I think they ultimately did with this game. Continue that trend with Remake, with the DLC. But I personally not minded it too much. I think it's kind of nice. It's kind of like trying to, you know, let the game kind of tell its own sort of story, and, you know, you kind of its own sort of vibe. You know, I personally have always found it a little, I don't know, it's like jarring, but like I've seen like playing like obviously Remake 2, but like with the old soundtrack, and for me, I've never really been a big fan of it. Like, you know, the old soundtrack's good and it works with Resident Evil 2, but that was in 1998. You know, the remake came 20 years later. It's just a different vibe, and, you know, as awesome obviously like some of the old RPD themes are and some of the boss themes and such go, like it's emblematic of a different era. So the way to get around that is like having stuff like that nowadays, but kind of remixing old sort of themes, which they did with Ada's stuff and that sort of thing, which they already have done and have done before. Notably with Ada in Resident Evil 6, they kind of remixed her theme a little bit at the very end of that, which was obviously a nice touch and stuff. And I think that's the way to go about it. But I don't think you need to have music blaring at all hours of all days. Like, there's times and to have kind of much more quieter moments. And I think this game did a decent job of that overall.
I think that it's. Oh, go ahead, Brendan.
I will say this though, like with Resident Evil 2 remake soundtrack, that one gets a lot of bad rep because of how poorly implemented the soundtrack was for that game. Because you literally can't hear it most of the time. It's like sometimes the things are just a little too quiet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. It was a little too much at times. I like the principle. I like the direction. I actually felt it went with the vibe and with the game sort of style pretty well, but it was a little too much that way. And I think they responded to that with Remake 3. I think Remake 3 was about right. I mean, you know, you've got your kind of more bombastic situations and music kind of going with it, but like, you know, what I still say by far the best part of the game, going to the hospital. And when you get to the hospital, it's very low key, it's very kind of quiet and, you know, very unsure what's going on, which is obviously fits the vibe of that sort of thing. So there's definitely times to exercise that. It doesn't have to be often and always. And with a DLC, like, you can be a bit more liberal with your use of music. Because you've already played the main game, it's additional content, so you can be a bit more blasé about it, which I think this game definitely does do.
Well, what I was actually trying to get at though was I like the fact that Capcom decided to keep the original structure of the original soundtrack for Resident Evil 3, just obviously like, you know, remix it or retune or whatever. But I think the reason why they did that, in contrast to just making a new soundtrack from the ground up, is because of the reputation Resident Evil 2 had. Because again, you couldn't hear it most of the time, so therefore people thought, oh, the soundtrack was bad. But when you flip on the classic soundtrack, you hear it literally most of the time in contrast. So like whoever did the audio thing fumbled hard on that one, which in return wouldn't let Capcom do more unique sounds for future soundtracks.
Yeah,
no, I agree. It wasn't the concept that was bad. It was the way they executed it. I think was left some bits to be desired. I think the idea was sound.
Like I said before, I don't think that all of their music is terrible. Like the Super Tyrant theme sounds fine. I went on record and said that sounds fine, but I'm not a fan of how it was particularly done, and I'm not a fan of the whole fact where it's like it's a little bit too quiet in almost every section of the game. And I think the reason why I like the soundtrack here in RE4 is because, you know, bombastic survival horror or more or less like survival action game where you're going around shooting all these baddies and the soundtrack is pulse pounding. I think it's more dramatic and fits there. And as you said, like RE3 is a good balance where there's some parts that's like slow, creeping and quiet, and then there's other parts where music is exactly where it needs to be. And I don't think it was, you kind of got to have a mixture of some iconic soundtracks here or there. So that's kind of what I think about it. You could intersperse it a lot better than what they did in that game. But anyone else want to sort of talk about final preambles for RE4 or anything else they want to bring up before we do outros?
I don't know. I don't think I have any.
Yeah, I can't recall anything else I want to.
One final call out that the Denuvo sucks.
Yeah, that's true, man. Capcom and Denuvo full games do not mix.
You know what? I got the last portion that someone brought up, but I think it was like overshadowed by the soundtrack talk. What are your thoughts on the new death scenes? Anyone who has seen them?
Most of them, like this is just RE4 issue in general. Most of them are kind of pretty mid in contrast to the vanilla. I'm sorry, not vanilla, the original game, because Capcom did not hold back at all with the death scenes in that game. Boy, I can tell you. Now, yes, obviously the remake or just modern, death scenes in general for Resident Evil are more detailed because of the polygons and all the other minutia, right? But just the expression of actually someone getting dismembered like hardcore, that is gone. Like Resident Evil did not have a super gory death scene in a long time since Resident Evil 7, I would say. And 4 definitely tones it up in contrast to the previous games like 3, 8, and RE2. But yeah, the death scenes are still kind of not satisfying to look at, I should say, right?
I'm surprised they didn't. They kind of took the laser scene and they didn't go all the way with it. I was kind of shocked by that.
Yeah, it's like that was just a disappointment right there.
I don't think I've seen
Well, the monster technically gets it. It's just that it's implied with Ada when you do get it with her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. You get it with the monster, just not the character you're playing as. So it doesn't have the same impact.
I beg to differ. I really liked how they did it. It's just like the silent, her gasping for last breath as you just see the red line going through. I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. It's just the subtle. It's just what happens. It's just that they're just showing the intense moment of her literally drawing her last breath, and he's like, what happens.
Dude, they should have did it because it's all reminiscent of the movie anyway, right? So even if they wanted to do the cutaway, they could have did it the same where how the cube just sort of formulates into this grid and it slices through the team leader, and you sort of see it sort of goes off screen, but you sort of see the rest of his body crumble in the cubes a little bit. You could tell what happened, but you don't see all of it falling to the floor. So they should have did it just like that. It would have had better impact, in my opinion. But the other ones are kind of like the one where the creature eats her. I thought that was sort of just typical but fun. I haven't seen any of the other ones like U3 where he kills her. I kind of forgot. I think he just eats off her head, which is common. Same for El Gigante. But yeah, it's just sort of, some of them are there. I think the most brutal one is the one where she dies to the little fan machine. I'm not sure if people saw that, where she sort of gets
drill.
Yeah, she gets drilled and it's just a lot of blood.
She tries to parry it.
She tries to parry
the drill.
Parry the drill. It's like, oh well, I'm fucked now. I just have to sit in this wall and take it. So
that's it. Yeah. That is literally
they're gonna be
coolest
what they are,
funniest death scene.
Yeah, that's true. It's gonna be what it is, but still.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair though, it's also there's only so much going. After some of that baby shit from Village, I don't really think you can top any of that. So at this point, you get.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think that's it for this podcast. We're gonna start doing outros and wrapping up here. Austin, where can we find you on social media?
Alrighty, you can find me on Twitter under the same username as AK Austin. You can find me on Twitch under the same name as AK Austin TTV. I actually have the end of this month for Halloween. I'm going to be streaming Resident Evils for 2 days straight, going through one from technically 0 to 6 and 7. I have planned. I don't know how I'm going to do it in 2 days, but we'll see. But yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, everybody. It was great. I really enjoyed it. It went a lot longer than I thought, but I am still here. So The ends justify the
Yeah,
means.
token.
Thank you all for
Go
the
see
ends
this.
justify the means, and I'll see you guys next time.
All right, Shadow, it is your turn. Where can we find you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube, blackscale993, also Twitch black_shadow_993. As far as YouTube wise concerned, we're currently playing through The Last of Us Part 2 for the first time, which has been slightly halted by a couple of projects I've had ongoing, but it's been alright so far. But I'm also doing work as well on another channel called Hidden Assets, which involved doing board gaming, specifically with Dune Imperium. And in particular, like a couple weeks ago, I said I was at a private event in North Carolina with the developers for a new version of the game coming out, and also Jimmy Donaldson's Mr. Beast. Got to play some games of him, which was pretty cool. We were really well treated the whole week, and we hope to do more stuff with that.
Brendan, where can we find you, buddy?
You can find me on Ren's basement, locked up.
Oh, fuck you.
Thought it was just vicious rumors.
Vicious rumors.
I'm kept down here simply for recording purposes.
Let me out.
Yep. Let me out. Let me out.
I'm sick of playing Resident Evil.
I mean, we were wondering on the origins of the test subject.
Oh, well, I mean, that's also funny. Jesus.
I mean, they did say the test subject did have a mental problem, so it makes a lot of sense.
Jesus Christ.
Yes. All right, you can find me on Twitter at @immortalbrando. I have a link tree in my bio somewhere. Look for it. You see all the associations. Everyone else is none of your goddamn business, so leave me alone.
All right. Enderlucian, where can we find you, buddy?
You could find me at Enderlucian on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. Next week, I will be playing Spider-Man 2. I'm hoping so. I already got the 19 inches of...
Okay, so-
I think you need to stop what you're saying right now.
Stop.
Okay, so yeah, just want to replay the first one, and I will be playing Spider-Man 2 next week, hopefully.
There you go.
All right. You can find me on YouTube at Renegade Operative. You can find me on Twitch at Renegade_Operative. I've been playing Spider-Man 2, and I have been really, really enjoying that game for the live stream. So I would say, you can find me there. Come check it out as I beat up bad guys with the alien symbiote. And I have 19 inches of venom, packing it, and beating people with 19 inches.
I don't think you'd beat him. Jesus Christ, relax.
That's a lot of meat to beat, so I'm gonna get through it eventually. And you can find my link tree on Twitter at rentoperative_, or affiliations here, infinite ammo, all that stuff. I'm not a hard man to find. Gaming fan, where can we find you, buddy?
You can find me whoever has a PS5 that I could steal because I want to play that crap so bad. I'm just the gaming fan on YouTube, horror-focused gaming channel. I have no particular plans. Just ignore me. That's it. That's all you got.
Hey man, well, it was good having you on this podcast. Good having everybody. Good discussions all around on RE, and honestly, it's gonna be quite interesting to see what the future holds from here. I know other horror games are coming out, like Alan Wake 2. Looking forward to that. So, till then, you will see us on the flip side when there's more RE information. We'll be here talking about it. So we will see you guys next time. Later.
Yeet.
Fuck off.
Make me.